Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Fume, a remarkable and easy way to kick a notoriously bad habit. Fume really is great. It's innovative and helpful, simplistic but effective, so there's no time to lose. Won't you try Fume for yourself? Embrace the good habit by going to tryfume.com/sacred. That's tryfum.com/sacred and getting the Journey Pack today. Fume is giving Sacred Symbols listeners 10% off when you use the code SACRED to help make starting the good habit that much easier. Again, to try the award-winning cessation device Fume, head to tryfume.com/sacred today. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 300. Wow. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined, as always, by my son, Chris Raygun, eating a cheeseburger from his other parents. How are you today, my friend? Good to see you.
I'm good. I'm in New York right now. I'm going to be in New York for a couple more days, and then I'm flying back home, just settling some stuff, doing some doctor's visits and all that stuff.
Unfinished business.
Yeah, just a bunch of stuff that I've been putting off for like an unrealistically long time. Like, I think we talked about it on the show, but like, I can't even remember the last time I went to the doctor.
Yeah.
I think like the last time I think I went to the doctor was probably like COVID related, which is not really a doctor. You just kind of go into some guy in an abandoned JCPenney who's like pricking you with a weird little needle.
Dead moles.
Yeah. But I feel pretty good. Scarfed down a burger. Not moments before we started recording. But Colin, like you said, like, wait, you eating a burger and then you looked at your watch. As if 1 p.m. isn't a reasonable time for a burger.
Well, no, you're right. I wasn't quite specific enough. I feel like homemade dinner burgers are normal, but fast food burgers for lunch, I think, would be normal. In other words, I'm surprised that someone's like, I'm going to fucking grill you or, broil you or whatever, a burger right now. It seems like a lot of work for lunch. That's my opinion.
Well, when you consider that my parents are a lot older, so their morning is like 5 a.m.
It's like when Jerry's staying with his parents and he wakes up at like 5 in the morning and they're all already up.
Exactly.
Yeah. I can't seize the day like that.
No, fuck no.
No. Nothing like that at all. Well, it's good to see you, my friend.
Yeah.
Dustin Furman, executive producer. Welcome to the show. I see you have Jim back there in the background. It's wonderful.
Oh,
good
yeah. He made the long journey to and from New York City. He's a little battle damaged at this point, but
his head's kind of cut off by your mic stand. I feel like you're going to need to ultimately find a better position for him.
Yeah, that's just where
but when you sit, I guess it will also be better.
Yeah, his legs are currently cut off. I need to reattach them. But yeah, we got Big Jim, and also I was showing this to Chris. We got Slim Jim. Also, we got this is the test print for the Big Jim.
Right.
And so yeah, we're just going to keep him around. Take care of him.
That's wonderful.
I can tuck him in my shirt or whatever, keep him warm. But I'm doing okay. Someone at the live show, who was it that got me sick? Someone got me sick.
Oh, you're sick. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm feeling okay, but I'm over the years, I've become very persnickety about washing my hands on a constant basis when I'm in those situations. No, it's not no offense to anyone. It's just an exchange of so many germs and all that kind of stuff. So I have gotten tragically, we used to call it the Pax Plague.
Right.
That was the name of it.
I was trying. I remember during the meetup or the meet and greet, like, don't touch your face. Don't try not to do anything. Use the hand sanitizer, or even better, go to the bathroom, wash your hands after. I remember doing all that stuff, but you can't avoid it sometimes. So I've been keeping it low key the last few days. Just I was sleeping. I was getting great sleep, Colin. Sleeping as much as possible, getting fantastic sleep.
That's some good sleep.
Just I was like, I don't want to be sick right now. So I'm going to try, if I sleep as much as possible, maybe that will shorten it. So I feel pretty good today, but my voice is still a little fucky, of course. But
yeah,
I was saying on the Discord, I'm like, I will not miss episode 300. If I had to record from a hospital room, I would do it, because this is an important episode. Even though we did our celebration, it's just like, I got to be here.
Yeah.
We talked about the documentary I watched about, I don't know if he was like a Filipino guy. It was something like that claimed that he never sleeps. Didn't we talk about this? Did we talk about this on the show? And how annoyed I was because the documentary just never seemed to stay with him overnight. So I just stay with them and see what happens. You're going to tell this guy claims I don't think for like 50 years or something he slept.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm like, that's just not possible.
No,
it's not possible. What are you, fucking totally off the genetic grid?
Well, first of all, embarrassing, because like he's saying that this is his claim to fame, is that he's never slept.
Right. Exactly.
If I never slept, I would have done so much. Like the amount of time that sleeping takes from you, as far as like productivity and just creativity and just like everything that you're able to do, is astounding. So the idea that like, I've achieved something really great by never sleeping. No, because you haven't used that time to do anything. It's a complete it's a wasted effort. What are you doing then? You're just sitting there awake silently for 8 hours staring? What are you doing?
Horrible. I couldn't imagine not being able to escape into sleep.
Oh my God.
Dude.
Yeah, go ahead.
Never sleep. I mean, that's about as dumb as saying, I've never eaten before. Like, it's just commonly known. You must sleep in order to survive. And then one guy comes out of nowhere. It's like, hey, I've actually never slept before. You're right, though. Just put a camera on him for 24 hours straight. You could do that. And see if it's true. Maybe 48 hours.
Well, you know what?
I found the video, by the way, in case you guys want to see it later. It's for people that don't know, it's Drew Binsky. He hasn't slept since 1962 is the name of it.
Sure, yeah. I think he lasted about a week, and then his brain got damaged from it, and now he can't remember that he falls asleep, I bet. I bet it's something like that. Because you do sleep, idiot.
He's Vietnamese, apparently, by the way. I was close. I was in the right area of the world. No, I wasn't. I said, what did I say?
You said Filipino.
No, Filipino. Okay, yeah. I was thinking I said Puerto Rican for a minute. I'm like, that's not the right part of the world. And that's not also, that can't be, because we would have dispelled that a long time ago. I would have personally gone to Puerto Rico and fucking investigated if it were that trivial.
Yeah.
But it's not. All right, boys. It's good to be here with you guys today. We'll talk about episode 300 in a minute, episode 300 celebration, because this is literally episode 300. It's unlike the episode 200, which was just a live show. So you're kind of getting additional content in some sense, just so you know. And it's no big deal. I'm not mad about it or anything like that. You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia, for early ad-free access to all of our shows across our network, including this one, Defining Duke, our Xbox podcast, Constellation, our conversational podcast, and so on and so forth. We have so many things to offer you over on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia, RSS feeds, access to connect to Spotify, all of those different things if you have early access, no ads in your audio, Sacred Symbols Plus also, once a week, exclusive for our patrons. We just did a 3+ hour conversation about Final Fantasy VII Remake called Final Fantasy VII Remake Revisited. Very deep dive into the game. I thought that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that very much. I did a conversation with Xbox journalist Jez Corden. That's actually available on YouTube for everyone now. We did a deep dive into Helldivers 2, emulation. I had Cliffy B on. I had Jonathan Blow on, and so on and so forth. I'm going to have Ken Levine back on soon. Talked to him a couple of days ago. As you guys saw, the Judas previews started rolling out. They invited certain people. I was actually invited to go play Judas, or it was come up like, we want to invite you and kind of figure this out last year. But I would have done that under NDA and wouldn't have been able to talk about it anyway. People were wondering, like, did I preview it or go play because I was in Boston at the time when this was all going on? That's just a coincidence. So no, I didn't play it, and I wouldn't accept traditional preview coverage. I wouldn't want to do that. If it's like, come play my game and dick around with it because we're friends or whatever, that's different, and I'm happy to see it. And I see games early like that once in a while, but no. So I have not played Judas. I have not watched any of the footage. I have not read anything about it because I don't want to know. So we'll be talking to Ken in the coming weeks, so that'll be fun, and we can get in all of that as well. Merch at laststandmedia.store. Free shipping on all stickers here in these United States. We have sweatshirts, t-shirts, hats, and so on and so forth. So come check those out. All right. We're back from the episode 300 celebration. We got a lot of really kind comments on Patreon about it. Of course, you can submit your inquiries on Patreon on our thread in the newsfeed each week if you're of the appropriate Patreon support level. And Dave Ramos said, hey guys, real quick, what reflections do you boys have regarding Sacred 300? Also, Chris, it wasn't directly addressed, but what are your thoughts on Dustin doing the most selfish thing a person can do? Procreation. It was awesome meeting you all, and to any patrons ever contemplating VIP, it's totally worth it. You guys are awesome. You can see how LSM is run by such a tight-knit group of people who genuinely enjoy what they do. I'd argue LSM almost has this family-run mom and pop feel. Very wholesome. Thank you. Really a lot of nice comments. I appreciate it. I'm excited to see the video product. We'll talk about that in a moment, but what are our reflections? What rethinking now that it's over. I'm glad it's over because it was occupying a lot of my mind. And but it was a lot of fun. And like all live shows, it's over like that.
Yeah.
And then it's in the past and you can barely remember it at all. So what are our thoughts? Dustin, you're nodding along. How was everything for Sacred 300?
Yeah, it went fantastic. It was the thing that I think that kept coming up for everybody involved was just being in the city and doing a sellout show was so incredibly cool. And this show, every show is a little bit different in terms of behind the scenes stuff, and not just what you see on stage, but how we have to put on the show. The thing that was really different about this show was because we're in New York City, it's very expensive. We're paying by the hour. So basically, as soon as we got in the venue, things had to happen very, very quick. And there was some technical issues that weren't on us that caused a little bit of chaos in the midst. And then VIP, man. VIP, it's always funny because we try to have as many of them available as we can, just because we know that people very desperately want them. But I think we may have overbooked them again because we want to make sure that everyone that comes has a quality time to meet us and get a photo, but it just takes a long time to do that. So we were running a little bit behind, but in the end, everything worked out awesome. And it was really great to have everybody together as always. And of course, meeting Brad for the first time, having him there. And he just fit right in with us as if he had been here for years. And so shout out to Ben. Of course, he's the one who goes and finds the venues, interacts with them, and plans everyone's travel, everyone's hotel room. It's a huge to do. And he really mastered the game this time, where he had predicted some stuff about the hotel, like when you guys came in, that they were going to ask you for a credit card to do the rest of the payment. And he was like, no, let me do this now. So he's really gotten quite good at this. So shout out to him for pulling off another awesome event planning for us.
Yeah, he did a nice job. It was, and congratulations to me too for founding the company as well.
Yeah, congrats to Colin.
Yeah, but Chris, what did you think? What are your preliminary reflections on episode 300?
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome to do a show in what I consider to be my backyard was really surreal in a strange way, because I felt more comfortable than I had in previous live shows, but at the same time more uncomfortable purely because I knew nothing about what was going to happen. So like I felt like this weird maximum of both, where I was like, oh, I feel really good and comfortable here, but also like, oh, I feel weird doing a live show where I don't know what the fuck is going to happen. That's like really strangely nerve-wracking, but I think it came out okay. I think we pulled out a fun show. There were some fun audience interactions. I especially like the guy who kept wanting to kill everybody. Mm-hmm. That was fun. Kill him. It was cool, and just to be on stage in front of everybody and meet. I met Gene for the first time and Brad for the first time, and seeing Cog again was nice. And being able to actually go out because I wasn't violently ill this time after the show, and go to that parkade that we went to, which was cool. And I don't know, I really love New York City, and having an experience like that there was really just I don't know. I wouldn't call it like a full circle type thing, but it felt like reminiscent of that kind of feeling where it's like, wow, this is kind of trippy that this is happening here. And yeah, no, I think Ben did a great job. I think everybody did a great job, and it was great meeting everybody. I did feel bad though, because sometimes I'm like, I want to, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I always want to do more for everybody who shows up, but I think everybody had a good time, and people seem to have had a great time. I like specifically reading people's in the Discord. There are people talking about like their New York City, their little city adventures, because some of them were really, really amusing. I don't know if you saw this. I said this in both Discords. I saw a guy dressed as like Sonic juggling or something in Union Square Park, and it was really confusing. Ugh. But it was also like the most calm thing I've seen in Union Square Park in years. So yeah, it was great, and I had a great time. And yeah, I don't know.
He wasn't.
Nuts.
What would have been more convenient in Union Park if he was a guy dressed as Sonic, but he was spray painting "All cops are bastards" on a statue.
Yeah, I think that's what
well.
his shirt said.
Yeah, it was good to be there. New York has a very specific vibe to me. So, like New York City, because I grew up, as everyone knows, on Long Island, and you don't really go into the city unless you have to for some reason. It's a totally different place. My dad worked in the city, so we were there more often than not. And my parents and their families are both like ultimately from Brooklyn, but yeah, it's not quite home for me, but it's surreal because it's obviously the place, the city as we call it, right? Like no one calls it New York City when you're on Long Island or upstate or anything. It's like you want to go to the city, or you have to go to the city for that or whatever. So, but when you're there, it's so huge. It's such a mass of humanity compared to any other city in the United States. Yet it's still so quaint compared to some of the truly major cities outside of the United States as well. So there's like so many different things to say about it, but it was a great show. And I had a lot of fun. I emailed Dustin and Ben about doing a Sacred Symbols Plus episode about kind of the behind the scenes lead in and like how everything went, which I think we're going to do if time allows, which I think will allow us to talk about it more from that perspective. But from a performance perspective, I just black out when I go on stage. So I was happy. I did write a few jokes and they were silly, and I didn't get to all of them because I didn't want to like go on too long, but it was cool. My parents were there, and shout out to my parents just because they really have come out and shown out for me, which is really nice. They're not spring chickens anymore. They're 73, both of them. So, and
I will say, listen, getting a little bit crazy with this. When I said it's the most selfish thing that a person can do is to procreate, I'm speaking specifically because there's a lot of people who have kids because they feel like they have to. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And that's a lot. And I've met children of those families. If you want to have kids, that's great. But like, there's a lot of people who like really.
You're an antinatalist.
I don't think everybody needs to do it. You know what I mean? I think it's perfectly acceptable not to do it.
I agree.
I think we all know a few people that definitely shouldn't, just on the genetic front. We want to stop those genes as soon as possible.
Yeah, dude, if I have a kid, I'm definitely crispering that kid's eyes. You know what I mean? Like I'm crispering the shit out of that kid's eyes. I'll be like, listen, these are not to be hand me down. But
well, Chris, you also made an argument just a few weeks ago about how unethical it is to bring someone into the world since they have no choice in it.
Well, I mean, I think it's equivalent. Well, again, that's with the in the conversation of, because I've seen a lot on Twitter, like you see, and this is cringe to be fair, but like you see these like NEETs, or not NEETs. What is it called? DINKs, double income, no kids.
Right.
And they're talking about like double income, no kids. I can do whatever the fuck I want. People are like, oh man, it's so selfish or whatever, or like and it's like, yeah, maybe, but like it's no more unethical or it's no more selfish than doing the opposite. In some way, it's all fine if it's what you want to do. I think it's a little bit cringe to like, perform about it. Yeah. But I think like, I don't know, man. I think it's just one of those things where people really need to take on the weight of like what it means to bring another like being into the world. And if you're doing that purely because you feel pressured to do it, you really shouldn't be doing it. It's just not. People don't think about it enough.
Listen, but it was very, very funny for me.
It was funny.
I have known that we're having a kid since early December.
Why wouldn't you say anything? Why wouldn't you say anything a little earlier to us? You let us hang for 4 months.
Yeah, it's fun that way.
4 months.
Yeah, you seem a little upset about this.
I guess we're not that close.
Yeah, tell me how you're upset about this, Colin.
I'll take a no. I'm really not upset about it. I was more embarrassed that I didn't know. Because I think you were told everyone the night before because we had our flight got diverted, and we missed dinner the night before. So I think you can really do whatever you want because I understand not. Well, I don't want to get into my family's business, but you announce things too early, and sometimes that can backfire.
Right.
And so you definitely want to make sure things are going along for a while and all of that. So no, it's to each their own. It's not my business at all.
Well, yeah. But when we were out of the window of safety for announcement, at that point, we thought, well, why not wait till Sacred 300? Because that would be the most fun way to do it. So that was mainly the thought behind it. But
Well,
cool.
Keenan Delaney wrote in and said, "Hi, CDC. Not a question, just a simple congratulations to Dustin and Holly on the announcement of their first child. Monkey D. Luffy, is that how you say it?
Monkey D. Luffy.
D. Luffy Furman has a nice ring to it, does not love the show, and congratulations on 300 episodes." So you do have something to contend with here, which is the child's name. Now, I did ask you about this. It is an option for you to name the child Colin.
Certainly.
I'm not taking that off the table, and I just want you to know that that's okay.
Does he get a raise if he does it?
Oh, okay. I like this, Chris.
It's like that. Did you see that when KFC forgave like $11,000 in student loans if you named if a couple named their kid Harland after
I do vaguely. Yeah, that's smart marketing.
Yeah.
No, I would say that actually the only thing that's going to stop Dustin from getting a deduction in his pay is if he does. So it's a little bit different than that.
Whoa, wait.
Than a raise.
Okay.
It's a bizarro raise.
Yeah, where it's 19th century America where there are no laws dictating what I do in my own business.
That's
right.
So crazy.
So child we know the sex, but does the audience know the sex?
I think I said at the live show, but yeah, it's a boy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. That's right.
Yeah.
And so the July 31st, right? Am I pulling that?
That's correct. No, you got it, dude.
I went deep down into my gray matter to pull that date out. Okay, so we have a little bit of time to deal with this now. Card Captor Corey wrote in and said, "Hi, I just wanted to say congratulations to Dustin and Holly on their journey to becoming parents. My wife and I are expecting a little girl in September. Kalina. Colin, are you giving Dustin paid paternity leave? If so, for how long? It's crazy how few employers offer it nowadays, since bearing a new generation of people is kind of important." It's funny because at big corporations where it's very impersonal, I can understand why people are like, I don't know, like, why do you need time away from your fucking cubicle, slave? So for men especially. But no, Dustin can. I told Dustin I would give him 3-ish months if that's what he wanted. I was told by Dustin that that's too much, and that maybe he'd get bored or that would be unnecessary. The question we have to ask ourselves is, do we replace Dustin permanently while he's gone, and then when he comes back, say psych?
Oh,
and he has to go to the unemployment line. I don't know. I think what we're gonna do is, if it works, is have Lockmore just fill in for you from a production standpoint, and then you'll be able to take however much time you really want away. And then if you want to start like coming and doing Sacred, but not really doing anything else after a month or two because you're bored or whatever, you're gonna be bored.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to be bored. You're going to be eager. There's going to be things to say. I hope there are big and crazy announcements while you're gone. You're going to be the guy with the vein in his head, the meme. It's going to be a whole thing,
Yeah.
So, but yes, you're allowed to take, I mean, really, if you even needed more than that, I would allow that, but you're the man. I do think 3 months is more than enough. If you were the woman, I don't know, like 6 months, something like that, I would probably do, because we're a small business,
Yeah.
That's the point I'm trying to make. Is like, if it's like Apple and you're in a numbers game, it's like, oh my God, like, what do you even do? But people, and all of that kind of stuff, I think it's important. So, and I think it's important you bond with the child. You're there for Holly, all that kind of stuff. So it'll really be no problem. So yeah, you'll be gone probably July. Well, maybe not July, but like August, September, October, something like that.
Yeah. The main thing, what I told you is just that I want to be able to record, like, I honestly, it's so hard because I've never had a kid before, so I don't know what it even looks like I know it's demanding, but I want to maybe come back for recording sooner, but I mean, there's so much of my work that's outside of just the recording. And so that could be my like time away during that. But yeah, we'll have to figure it out with Lockmore, what his availability is. And we'll also need, I mean, if it's an extended time, we probably need someone to do thumbnails, because that's not really Lock's thing. There's a whole bunch of shit to figure out, but we've got plenty of time to. Yeah,
good thing you knew for 4 months and then tell me.
Oh yeah,
no big deal.
Good thing we have 3 months now.
It's no big
for
deal.
me to figure it out, and not you.
It's no big deal. Yeah, I know. I'm not gonna be figuring it out anyway.
Exactly,
What am I gonna be figuring out? No big deal. All right. Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Fume, a remarkable and easy way to kick a notoriously bad habit. Learn more now at tryfume.com/sacred, that's F-U-M, to get 10% off your order. My friends, it's really quite simple. Fume is a breath of fresh air, and you can take that literally, since by using your Fume-flavored air device in lieu of some other more pernicious habits, you'll be able to enjoy all-natural, tasty, good-smelling air that'll make you wonder why you even bother with the other stuff. So here's the rub. Fume is a well-made wooden and metal implement that holds replaceable flavored and scented so-called cores. And these cores come in a number of wonderful varieties: crisp mint, maple pepper, sparkling grapefruit, and so on and so forth, or my personal favorite, orange vanilla. By simply pulling on your Fume-flavored air device, you can taste and enjoy your all-natural core of choice. And what's remarkable about Fume is that it doesn't require a charge. There's nothing to turn on at all, actually, because Fume is a completely analog device that features zero electronics. This is perhaps my favorite part about it, actually, that I can just leave it on my desk to use when I work and never ever have to worry about charging anything or running out of juice or whatever else. And I enjoy using it merely for leisure. I imagine those of you out there in the thralls of an especially bad habit will find Fume to be a notable, if not essential, replacement for your current, let's call it, dangerous regimen. Fume really is great. It's innovative and helpful, simplistic but effective, so there's no time to lose. Won't you try Fume for yourself? Embrace the good habit by going to tryfume.com/sacred, that's tryfum.com/sacred, and getting the Journey Pack today. Fume is giving Sacred Symbols listeners 10% off when you use the code SACRED to help make starting the good habit that much easier. Again, to try the award-winning cessation device Fume, head to tryfume.com/sacred today. Mr. Fizz wrote in, said, "Hey CDC, first I'd like to congratulate you on a great celebration in New York City. I had a blast and made many new friends. Secondly, I'd like to shout out Sean Mason for putting together a meetup prior to the VIP session. Yeah, shout out to Sean. It was great to see you. Lastly, I brought my 19-year-old daughter who vaguely listens as I drive her around town. She is now enamored with Chris's content and weebishness. Colin, what kind of deal can we strike for a betrothal? Why can I say it? A betrothal. Right? That's how you say it. Betrothal. Yeah. I don't think I've ever actually said it. I said betrothed. Betrothed. So, all right. So he basically wants a fixed marriage here, is what he's saying. Chris, will you marry Mr. Fizz's 19-year-old daughter?
No.
Okay, fair enough.
Dude, Mr.
Thank
Fizz, he's so nice, though. He used to come to my streams all the time. I remember meeting him. He'd be a great father-in-law.
Yeah. You know what? Something about, you know what? Let me put it this way. I don't know if you've seen certain documentaries about older people in Nickelodeon, maybe. But I'm definitely not going to say, oh, yeah, I'll marry your 19-year-old daughter as a 30-year-old man. I'm not going to do that. That's insane. But, God bless.
You should think about it.
That's okay.
Yeah, fair enough. She's an adult. I mean, 19 years old. I mean, I didn't know anything when I was 19. Yeah, okay. Well, can I just be honest with you guys? Sure. I'm of two minds about this. Not the Nickelodeon stuff, because I really haven't seen it. I'm not familiar with any of those shows anyway, but I'd like to watch that at some point. But just the kind of infantilization of the 18 or 19 or 20-year-old, like, once you cross that threshold, in my opinion, it's like there are all of these moralistic reasons we shouldn't be with each other. I think the big thing is like, I'm almost 40. It's like, what would I even talk to a 19-year-old about? Like, what would our relation? That's just like totally out of bounds. But people treat it like it's like the same as dating like someone who is much younger than that. And I'm like, they're an adult ultimately. So it's not like that ridiculous. It's more ridiculous from of like, what do you want from this person than a legalistic judgment. So I just wanted to, because I do feel like people are getting a little crazy with that. Like Leonardo DiCaprio being like, Leonardo DiCaprio is like robbing the cradle. I'm like, Leonardo DiCaprio is a grown man and he dates like 22-year-old women. It's not like, I don't know what he says to them. I'm pretty sure he doesn't say very much to them.
Right. Yeah.
Not a lot of talking going on.
Yeah, exactly.
In that relationship.
So just wanted to throw that out there. To each their own. In other words.
Right. I do think 30 to 19 is a bit crazy.
I think so,
you understand?
Too. But yeah.
There's a threshold where I think it becomes kind of not really like, I think as soon as you're like 26, you could date a 50-year-old for all I care. Like I really could give a fuck less. But I do think like, I don't know, man, like 19, you're still in like you're not really you're an adult in the sense that you have like somewhat of some level of autonomy, but you can't drink. You're kind of in college maybe, and even that's like really, really early. You don't really know the real world. There is a certain amount of infantilization, not necessarily through like societal views, but just like what you experience as an adult at that point that kind of makes you somewhat incompatible with a real adult. Yeah. And I'm sure we've all lived to experience this too, where like, you know, I think in like, I don't know, like maybe in the 40s and 50s, a 10-year difference probably doesn't shape you that differently. But like, I think now it's like, I don't know, I look at people who are born like 4 years under me and I don't understand what the fuck they're saying. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's such a drastic divide between generations that like increases exponentially as like technology and as media and as all these things like drastically evolve to the point where it's like, I'm 30, but like, a 25-year-old, it's not ethically wrong, but like I've met 25-year-olds at 30 and I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I don't know what I don't know their memes. I don't know their language. I don't know like the references that they're pulling from. I don't know the experiences that they're pulling from. It's strange. And granted, that's insular and very anecdotal. I don't know every single 25-year-old, but like, I don't know.
Well, I do think, because my wife is 10 years younger than me. We discuss this sometimes where it's like, it is all relative depending on where you encounter each other, obviously. So
for sure, yeah.
Like I always show, knowing her age, I'll bring up a story about like, oh, that happened to me when I was in college. You should have been there. And she's like, I was like, 12. I was like, oh yeah, right, that's true. Yeah. So like, obviously that's not going to work. And then even when you're like 20 and 30, I think that's fine. I've known people in relationships like that, but that's still weird. But we met each other more when it was like 26, 36, 26, 35, something like that.
Yeah, that's whatever.
And yeah, so I agree with you. Like that distance will always be the same, but the distance means something different depending on where you are. And I also think maybe people wouldn't agree with this. In my experience, women always mentally mature quicker too. So that by a 26-year-old woman is probably equivalent to like a 32-year-old man, something like that, I would think. I don't know though.
I don't know, man.
It's complicated.
I'm not a scientist.
Well, that's obvious. Thank you for that was meaner than I expected it to be. Holy shit, that sounded way meaner. All right, so Mr. Fizz, betrothal declined.
Sorry. I'm sure you're a very nice person.
At least 6 years.
I have an 18 6 year. I was gonna say I have an 18-year-old nephew. And he's off to college in the fall. So if you want to get some dowry situation going up, I don't know if I can collect the dowry as his uncle, but I'm going to try. Nonetheless, some goats, grain, so on and so forth. By the way, I was watching a documentary on PBS Wyoming last night. It was really interesting. It was about, we should go and do this. You can go to Wyoming, go to these like little quarries, and you can just basically every rock you pick up has fossils in it. Not like important fossils necessarily, but like fish fossils and plant fossils and stuff. And then you can get them, bring them home, and you can make like backsplashes for your stove and do all this kind of cool stuff. And it was about the conflict on if that kind of stuff should be legal or not, or if all that stuff should be owned by the government, since it's this naturalistic stuff. Just wanted to throw that out there for no reason in particular. Dylan Brown wrote in and said, "Hey dudes, just wanted to know when you think we'll get the video of the live event. Thanks and congratulations on 300. So I don't actually know the answer to this, Dustin. Weeks from now, I guess. I don't. Or are you gonna take like a year to do it?
Yeah, 2 years actually.
2. Yeah.
No, I don't have the hard drive yet. I think it's supposed to come in the mail today with all the footage. So I will be starting on that next week. And then, I usually what's the longest it's ever been? A month? I think for Houston was maybe the longest, and it may have been exactly 1 month. So it would be no more than that. But I want to get out of the way real quick because this happens every fucking time. There will be no audio version. Do you go to the to the video section like, hey, I'm looking for the audio only version of Oppenheimer?
You saying this is not going to matter. So
I want to mock and insult those that will ask though. because they're going to ask anyway. So I want them to pre-insult them, actually, is what I would like to do.
That's fine. Speaking of insulting the audience,
yeah, please.
I feel like last week I let you down on the show because I envisioned this situation. You were saying poopery, and I'm like, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Those comments.
Oh my God.
Please.
So poopery is a spray. It's a brand. I think they actually renamed it more in the recent years because I was looking it up, and now it's like a petpurry or something like that or whatever. But poopery was a spray that you would leave in your bathroom or whatever it was. And people thought you were saying potpourri.
Potpourri, wrong.
And I knew it. Like when you were saying it, I feel like I just let your hand was up. You were hanging on the cliff and I was like, fuck it. He's going to fall. But I knew that you needed the hand. And for some reason, I just didn't say it. And then I went and looked at the comments and lo and behold, people were saying, did you hear this guy saying potpourri? Come on.
So yeah. I'm looking now. The brand has been somewhat renamed to so there's petpurri and there's poopery, home purri. There's all types of purri, but yeah, I'm speaking of their sub brand now called poo, like as in poop, poopery. You spray in the toilet. I know the difference between potpourri, but not everyone is cultured enough to know about poopery.
This is what I'm talking about 9 out of 10 comments from the audience being just dead wrong.
Right.
This is a really great example.
Yeah.
A really great example of that. I'm sorry. I knew it. And like there was some sort of butterfly effect in me where I'm like, I'm letting this go.
I felt the same thing. I was like, I felt like a spider sense thing,
right.
Like a tingling. It's like something about what just happened is wrong and bad.
People are going to say something annoying about it. That was my spider sense.
Yeah.
I have a real good spider sense for that.
I was just like, it's too late. It's too late.
Sorry about that.
He's fallen.
Maybe you should have told me your wife was. Maybe you should have told me your wife was pregnant. And I would have.
Oh, it's really that's really got you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's poopery and
pregnancy gate,
dude. Oh no, that doesn't sound right. But yeah, don't ask for the audio version. It wasn't designed to be audio. And so therefore it never will be. If you want to download the YouTube video and rip it to it and listen on audio like some kind of fucking freak, go for it. But I will not provide it for you. And it'll be a fantastic video in 4K. Our boys from Catalog Co., they did it again. They did a fantastic. I mean, I'm assuming maybe they didn't do a fantastic.
Yeah, it's like in fucking 480 wobbly.
Yeah. Everything they've done for us so far, every live show but Butler. They've done an amazing job. It's in, beautiful 4K, just beautifully shot. So,
well, did they do Butler?
No.
That's what I was okay. Because what it sounded like you said was everything that they did for us except for Butler was good.
Okay, thank you. Oh, your spider sense went off, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. We didn't record Butler, did we?
No, we did.
We did. It was but it was pretty rudimentary. We just
gotcha. Yeah, that was so quaint compared to we've been building up.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're about maxed out size wise, probably at about 500 people, depending on where we play, which is totally fine with me.
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, we'll leave more of the discussion on this, on the happenings at the show for the Sacred Symbols Plus episode I hope to do. I want to read a couple more things, though. Hank Wilson wrote in and said, hey, guys, congratulations on Sacred Symbols 300. This was my first live show, and I just wanted to say thank you to all the LSM crew and the Iron Lords for putting on such a great show. The Iron Lords podcast, of course, opened the show, which we appreciate. I also wanted to share a quick story about the trip. My friend and I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we decided to take the Amtrak to New York to see the show. We joked we might be the only ones from Pittsburgh making the trip, and that we were definitely the only ones who chose to take the train. Well, 8 hours into the 9-hour return trip, I hear two guys sitting in the seats directly in front of us talking about how they couldn't believe that Nathan Drake was modeled after Johnny Knoxville in the first Uncharted game. So after mustering up a little bit of courage, I interpreted their conversation to ask if they had been at Sacred 300, and sure enough, they were. We chatted for a while about the show, games, and the experience of riding the train. I couldn't believe that out of everywhere on the train, we just happened to be sitting directly next to each other. It was really a Festivus miracle. So I just wanted to send a quick shout out to the Ant-Man and Robbie. You guys are super cool, and I can't wait to meet up and serve Controlled Democracy to some bugs together. Hank? I think you left out a verb, but to what bugs? You just wrote to meet up and serve Controlled Democracy to... So serve, I guess, would be the verb, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Serve democracy.
Right. Thank you for writing in, Hank. I love that kind of thing. I had a similar experience going to 311 Day 2004. So Ramon and I went to 311 Day 2004. We were in college, obviously, and we met these two guys who were shadow Ramon and Colin. Their names are Jay and Gus. They lived in Melrose, which is outside of Boston, and we had just met them. Now, I don't think this will be bad thing. Anyway, one of them snuck a ton of weed through, like an ounce of weed onto the plane. And we befriended them and we went to New Orleans. That's where it was, or New Orleans. And that's where the 311 show was. And we just smoked out our room in the Days Inn. We watched Maury Povich. We have like very funny memories of this. And then we went to the show that night, March 11, 2004. And 20 years later, we're all still boys to this day. And because of that chance encounter, like we had no reason to meet each other other than going to that 311 show. They like weren't college guys. They were like, more blue collar dudes. They lived out in the suburbs. We used to take the Orange Line, which is one of the trains in Boston, and go meet them and just smoke. So we just smoked so much. Like I never met two other guys that smoked more weed than me. And yet it was them, and it was awesome. Love those guys. So I'm glad that you had that experience, Hank. Hopefully it turns into something memorable for all of you as well. Finally, Case Johnson wrote in, said, Colin, please read and give me a pass on length. My name is Case, and I am 41 years old, who has been listening to you since your IGN days. We share a lot of the same views and perspectives, and for the last couple of years, I only listen to Sacred Symbols and the other shows. I always wanted to see you guys, but things never lined up until Sacred 300. I live in Morrisville, Pennsylvania, which is right on the Delaware River across from Trenton, New Jersey, and now was my best shot to see you. I bought my ticket in January and used 2 vacation days from work for Monday and Tuesday so my wife and I could stay and enjoy New York and not have to rush home. Friday, I started getting a cough and I thought to myself, this cannot be happening, not now. Well, it got much worse from that point. By Saturday, I was on the brink of death and in shambles because I kept hoping it would pass by Sunday. I woke up Sunday and I could barely swallow nor talk with such a severe fever, sore throat, coughing, congestion, and weakness. But I said, screw it, I'm going because I'll never get this chance again. So against my better judgment, we made our way to New York. We got here around 6:30 p.m. And as soon as I got to the hotel room and looked at myself in the mirror, I realized I couldn't put someone at risk of getting illness at the show. There was no way I could be discreet either because I was coughing and hacking things up. Everything was ruined. I know I made a poor choice, but it really meant that much to see you guys, and I'm not sure I'll ever get the opportunity again. I wanted to ask you or the crew maybe sign a t-shirt for me or just at least have something for my attempt. I will pay for it. Sorry so long. It sounds like you're saying sorry so long in like that racist Asian way. I just had to explain my story. Hope this show was a banger, and I'll keep listening forever.
That's such a wild interpretation of that.
I don't even want to do the impersonation of it because I think it's probably going to be offensive to someone. But I think you understand. So Case Johnson, DM. I'm sorry to hear this. This is always a fear of mine too when I have to put on a show, because I was sick not too long ago, like right before I went to Boston. So it could have lined up and I was really scared. I'm always nervous, which can even make you more sick, more susceptible to being sick. Yeah. DM me on Patreon and we'll send you stuff for free. So no worries at all. Okay. Love you. Long time. All right, let's see here. Anything else I want to get through? I'm gonna skip this one. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay, right. This is a sad one, and we're out of the show stuff now. So thank you all for your love, kindness, and support.
Yeah.
Casper wrote in and said, "Hey CDC, congrats on 300 episodes. Here's to the next 100. Sorry for having to start the first episode of the 300s on a somber note, but if you'll bear with me for a moment as I find this to be a strange coincidence and also to help with my grieving. On the most recent episode of Constellation, one of the topics involved what everyone's happiest memories were, which led Colin and Dustin to talk about the day they adopted their dogs and how they're dreading the day when they have to go. The very next day after the episode was posted to Patreon, my family made the difficult decision to put our 11-year-old, how do you say that, Pyredoodle?
That sounds right.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a breed person, really. I don't really know much about dogs, to be honest. To sleep due to cancer and his back legs being no longer functional. We got him when I was 13, and now at 24, I feel I can hardly remember what life is like without him. He was the best friend a kid like me could have asked for, and I will miss him dearly. Please give Frisk, Rush, and Treble some extra head scratches and treats in memory of Winnie. And thank you guys for all the content to help keep people like me emotionally stable during times like this. It helps more than you can imagine. I'm very sorry to hear this. We got a second email, actually. I'm not going to read it because it's we don't need so much sadness. The three of us have enough sadness without having to read anyone else's sadness. But Jeremy Jones also wrote in about the passing of his dog, which is very sad. I'm very sad to hear it. We'll keep them in mind. Horrible thing. What can you say? Now, are you excited with your child, Dustin? The interaction between the dog and the child should be very fun, I would imagine.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Well, Holly, I keep telling her already. She's like, I'm so excited for seeing Frisk and the baby, or her dream is that the baby will be laying somewhere and Frisk will lay beside the baby. I'm like, you're not just excited. You're going to openly weep when you see Frisk and the baby. And I'm also very excited for that. But we've been trying to tell if Frisk can tell if Holly's pregnant, because like there'll be times where she wants to lay right next to her belly. But I don't know if that's just us trying to look for that. But they say, different pheromone stuff, dogs can pick up on stuff. So who knows?
Maybe a little jealousy once the baby's born.
Could
Who
be.
knows?
Could be.
Yeah. All right. Finally. Is this all I have to say? Oh, well, actually, I did have a note I wrote down here on my pad. There's a user named Nade Sticker. Do you know this person? Nade Sticker?
I don't think so.
Nope.
He wrote in. I didn't read it, but he gave us a bunch of gifts at the Micah and I a bunch of gifts at the live show, including I thought it was really sweet. An email. Oh, it's from Ben. Says, sorry, I am unavailable tomorrow. Okay. Well, that's great, Ben. That's fantastic. I guess we can't do that podcast tomorrow. Way to go. Way to be busy. So he gave me the Funko Pops for Dr. Wily and Rush. Now I already have them. They're on my back shelf. I've had them for a while. They were purchased to me by people too. I didn't even know they existed, but we put those downstairs, the replicas that you've gotten us downstairs on our entertainment center. So we appreciate that very much. He also got Micah a Cracker Barrel mug as well. And then I thought maybe you would know something about this. Do you know what this is, Dustin? It's called the Universal Fighting System.
I'm looking it up.
What the hell?
So he bought me a bunch of these Mega Man cards. And Magnet Man is my favorite villain in Mega Man for Mega Man 3. So he bought me like every Magnet Man card. But it's like some card game I've never heard of before. And also he bought me like the Rush ones, which are very nice. So I wanted to give him a shout out. That's very sweet of you. I have never heard of this. The art is so cool though. Seeing new Mega Man art is always exciting because I feel like I've seen it all.
Was that the one? Was that in the big blue? The big blue bag?
Yeah. Like the gift bag.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I'd be like, whoa, the hell's in there?
It wasn't a bomb. Thank God.
I'm always thinking that's like there's always like at least 5% of my brain that's like, there's like anthrax in this.
Can I be honest with you? Like, I don't want to die, obviously, but
right.
Anyone could take us out at any time in any of these live shows. And what a weird way that would be to go. Like, I'm a video game podcaster and someone with a beef with me came to my VIP session and killed me. Would that make me like some sort of legendary figure?
Yeah.
Or would people forget it? Because things happen so quickly we forget,
It would be in the annals of, I think, content creator history for sure if something like that were to, because it happens so infrequently, but not so infrequently that it never happens. Like it's happened before. Like it definitely has, like not many times, but I remember Christina Grimmie from like 2011 or something.
Right.
That was like that whole thing. That was a long time ago, to be fair, but I don't know. It's where I think, what is that episode of Seinfeld? It's like, I'm bombable.
Yeah. I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
All right. Finally, people have written in about this before because we talk about YouTube Premium sometimes.
Yeah.
And Rotating Third Chair wrote in and said, you don't need Premium to watch YouTube without ads. Just use the Brave browser or an extension like YouTube Enhancer for free. I also recommend the extension Sponsor Block that skips ad reads inside videos. There's two things to say about this. Number one is your ad blocker works on YouTube on PlayStation or your smart TV. Like, I don't even understand or your Apple phone. Like, I don't even understand. So I don't know like if you're watching on a computer, I don't watch YouTube on a computer. So
I rarely.
That's number one. Number two, I'm not trying to steal the content from people. The reason I use ad blocker traditionally, I didn't use ad blocker for a long time. People used to make fun of me at IGN for it. The reason I started to is because it started to become like fucking malware and fuck around with everything and leave crazy shit in your cookies and explode the size of your cache and all this kind of stuff. So I started using ad blocks. I'm like, this is ridiculous. But I'm not trying to get it for free. I'm trying to pay for no ads. And those are two different things. So I appreciate that people out there have this real dedication to not pay for anything, whether it's pirating content or games or whatever, and they take like a lot of pride in this. And I think that blocking ads is like the least of anyone's problems. I'm not like that crazy about it. But you have to understand that I don't block ads because I don't want to see ads necessarily. I block ads because they started fucking around with everything and it started getting insane. And that the things you're talking about don't work where I watch YouTube. So even if I want it, it's like, I don't understand where people are watching YouTube where you can do this stuff, but I know you can do like VPN level stuff via like your router. I think that would stop certain things from being fed, if I understand. And I only know that because of sponsorships in the past, where it's like you can just totally trick your whole network basically into thinking you're somewhere else or whatever. But I'm not really trying to like just get things for free. I'm not trying to be a dickhead. I appreciate the message, but at the same time, like, make sure your content creators are being paid. We don't really worry. Ads are like the icing or like the candles on the cake for us because we're fan funded, but that is not the case for most people. Like, think about Maddie as an example or something, although Maddie has a Patreon, I guess, but like, think about Maddie, like when he puts a video up, its ad revenue truly matters to his bottom line. And it's kind of makes me sad that people are like, I'm just going to make sure to nullify this completely.
Yeah.
I don't know. It bothers me that people like don't. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But just get fucking YouTube Premium. It's so great. Like it really is. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's really good. I'm with you where like I rarely, unless I'm like streaming or something, and I'm already at my computer doing other things, and I'm like clicking a link that somebody sent me on Twitter or something. I'm very rarely watching YouTube on a computer. Like it's usually through my phone or on like a console. Like through my TV. Like I'm very rarely interfacing with YouTube's actual website. And I don't know, it is a little disheartening to hear that there's like the things that will skip ad reads in videos. Cause like, I don't know, man, I put, when I've done them, I've put some pretty intense, I've
your
put
ad reads are
like
the top 1% of ad reads in my opinion.
Like I totally get like not what the whole like, pre-roll thing. Like I hate them. And it's probably like the main reason why I got YouTube Premium in the first place. Is like I cannot deal with these pre-rolls and these mid-rolls. I hate them. Not necessarily because they're ads, but because they're ads that have nothing to do with the person that I'm watching. But like I think about other content creators like Internet Comment Etiquette who like their ads are hilarious. And just like, I don't know. There's something there at the very least, even if it's not like what you're trying to watch. But I always try to like at the very least let it play.
Yeah, I mean I skip ads when I listen to podcasts. But I also unintentionally listen to ads sometimes because I'm not thinking. And then I've also over time bought things from the ads where I was like, oh, this is actually kind of something I might need. So again, I don't want to tell people how to listen to their stuff. It's just this instinct of like, I don't know. It's like when TiVo came out and it's like skipping commercials is so key and so important, you know? And I totally get that. I don't even want to. Dude, we were in the fucking hotel room in New York City eating dinner late night, both nights we were there, ordering in or whatever, pizza one night and steak, Shake Shack the next night. And we're watching TV and it's just like, dude, the commercials are never ending. I can't believe it. But that bothers me because we're paying for cable. You know, like at some point it's like, how much more can we possibly, anyway. I appreciate the write-in. If you guys want to do all that kind of stuff, that's cool. But I don't even know. You think I'm going to like download the Brave browser on my iPhone and watch fucking YouTube through that or something? It's like, dude, I'll just use the YouTube app and pay $15 a month. It's not the end of the world. It really isn't.
I was in the same boat where I was just watching, I think I had Comedy Central on and The Hangover was on. And I was watching like the first movie, The Hangover. And I totally forgot how intrusive the ads are when it comes to like movies, because like that first Hangover movie is like 4 hours long now, and then you get like 50 commercials like after like some key plot point. Like,
dude, I was inoculated from it when I was a kid.
Me too.
Where like it was like that was just the way it went, and then once they remove that option, it's like, I just don't want to participate with this anymore. I'll find out a way to pay for this in a subscription model or a la carte rental or something to watch it. Because the same thing happened. We were watching CNN. I think I said it during either the VIP or the live show. I was watching like the history of the Windsors, like the royal family. Yeah. And I swear to God, every 7 minutes, there was a fucking 5-minute commercial break. I was like, what is happening here? This is so annoying. You can't even get into a rhythm. We're just not used to it anymore.
No.
Anyway, rotating third chair. Stand down.
Ooh.
All right. Let's get into some news items here. Smaller news items. Guys, this is exciting. You guys might remember that randomly, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, a Stellar Blade demo appeared on PlayStation Network for like 15 minutes. And some people actually managed to download it and get footage from it and all of that. So that was a sign that there was going to indeed be a demo coming for PlayStation 5's, at least console exclusive, Stellar Blade. And now we know that it will be arriving March 29th, the day that this podcast goes live. So by the time you're hearing this, you can download the Stellar Blade demo. The full game is available April 26th on PlayStation 5. Very exciting. Looking forward to this game. Not for the reasons you might think. I know a lot of people are looking forward to this for a lot of those kinds of reasons. That's fantastic. I just think the game looks really fun. And I'm really excited about it. But I think I'll stay away from the demo and just go in fresh. Dustin, will you download and play the Stellar Blade demo? Will you do it in front of your pregnant wife?
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's a little much.
I'm going to make her watch, dude.
Oh, interesting.
I have to just continually try to assert dominance,
Right.
So I'm really excited about this demo though. And Colin, I was a little concerned for you. I know there's previews out, but I've seen a lot of Sekiro comparisons for this game.
It doesn't look like it to me. Like it doesn't. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've said before that I think people's comparisons to these Souls games are getting out of control. And that you have to be very careful in comparing games to those games because they mean very specific things.
Sure.
This game is way too kinetic looking. It looks like Ninja Gaiden. And I wonder if a lot of people even have the context of what I'm even talking about at this point.
No. Yeah, no way. Like if you were to imagine like how like the majority of people playing games now, like there's no way I guarantee you the majority of people who are playing games now have never played Ninja Gaiden.
That's what it looks like to me.
Well,
or maybe like Devil May Cry or something. But I'll wait and see. Maybe I should play the demo to get a better feel for it because that had the Rise of the Ronin. I have no interest in that game really. I never really have. But the way people talked about it put me off from it even more. So
yeah, same.
I don't know.
Yeah, I will let you know next week because
I'm
definitely going to play it.
Yeah. Please do.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to play it too.
Oh, good.
I think I want to know what I'm getting into because I think it looks cool and there's definitely. Like from a presentation aspect, it looks really, really solid, but like you don't really know exactly how something plays or if you're going to want to necessarily see something through to the end just by how it looks. And if I have the option to play something for free, I'm going to take it. I don't think I'm not necessarily so worried about like getting so involved in Stellar Blade where I'm like, oh man, this lore is so good. I wish I had just gone in fresh and waited for it to come. I don't foresee that being true. So yeah, I'll definitely play this demo.
Cool. Yeah, it'll be available again by the time you hear this podcast. So go check it out, free of charge, April 26th for the full game. If you want to pre-order or buy it when the time comes, do whatever it is you want to do. All right, this news happened when I was writing the show and I included it this morning. We knew that, so let's just start at the beginning here. Embracer Group, way bloated. We said this since they started buying all these developers. What is the plan? There is obviously no plan. You may recall that Gearbox was purchased by, I mean, this is the crazy stuff, is that Gearbox was purchased by Embracer for like $1.3 billion. And then they ran into all of this money trouble, and they are selling for $460 million to Take-Two, the owner of the 2K label. This makes a lot of sense since 2K is the publishing label of Borderlands and Take-Two owns the Borderlands IP. So this kind of unifies them. And that makes a great deal of sense to me, but it's a huge loss. It's an $800 million loss right off the cap. And that's fascinating. This will apparently help them a great deal, though, with their liquidity, which is nice. What I was reading here, though, on the Business Wire press release is that the consideration, it says, quote, the consideration, so the money, consists entirely of newly issued shares of Take-Two common stock. So it's not even a cash deal. It's and they're issuing new Take-Two common stocks, or are these from buybacks that Take-Two owns, or are they diluting their shares to get Gearbox? There's something weird here, but nonetheless, what a loss for Embracer. They should have never owned Gearbox. It was not, remember when they started buying Gearbox and Crystal Dynamics and all that kind of stuff? And I'm like, they're now buying AAA studios. That was not the space they were supposed to be in. It's such an expensive space. They were supposed to be in the AA space, like a big, expansive AA suite of developers that their games cost, let's say, $5 to $25 million or something. Now you're buying teams that their games cost hundreds of millions. You just can't do it. So Gearbox is out, and they're now with Take-Two. So that makes a great deal of sense. They confirmed that the new Borderlands is in development. I think we kind of already assumed that was happening. Some IP does stay with Embracer Group, but it's smaller stuff. Some will go with Gearbox itself over to Take-Two. And there was kind of a secondary thing that happened as well. They're not really a console developer per se, but Sega has allowed Relic to spin out and become an independent studio as well. Relic is best known for Company of Heroes and Homeworld and a few other things. They're mostly PC centric. My assumption on this, I couldn't find any details. Like, there's no press release about it. It was just announced. Relic will continue outside of Sega and support some of their Sega published games moving forward. But I imagine that this deal might have been like, you can just go and we're not going to pay for you anymore. And you can figure it out on your own. Because I can't find any of the financial details on what happened here, at least at the time we're recording. So I wonder if this was just like, listen, because Sega just laid off a couple hundred people as well, as we know. And Chris somehow knew that before anyone. Chris has connections, but Chris knew about the Sega layoffs like 4 months before they happened or something.
Yeah, I said it on the show, but then I was like, we should probably cut it out because I'm not,
I
don't know.
asked you if you wanted to be sure. Because you said it a little flippantly, and I was like, hey, we don't have to cut it, but I just want this could be a story if you're not ready.
Yeah, I got paranoid about it because I'm like, oh well, I'm not I don't know how much I should vet. I know it's true, but at the same time, there's always like 1% doubt where I'm like, I don't know, maybe.
No, I know, I get it.
But I knew about that a while back. I have some friends who worked for Sega who were laid off a little bit early, and who there was all sorts of things going on there. That's how I knew that this year was just going to continue to be bad. It was just like, okay, this is going to continue into this year, and mega unfortunate. But,
I haven't. There's that game layoff tracker that I've used before. Here it is.
Yeah.
Publish. It just look for game layoff tracker. It's at a URL called Obsidian.
Wasn't it like at 11 something thousand last year, and it's over like 75 now?
Yeah. So 2022 was 8,500. 2023 was 10,500. 2024 is 8,000. So far. Yeah.
Wild.
So, and yeah, Sega of America, March 8th, laid off 61. So anyway, you guys might recall Relic used to be with THQ, the original THQ. And when THQ started going under, Relic was just auctioned off to pay its bills. And Sega only paid like $25 million or something like that for the studio and some of its IP. So my assumption is just that they extracted requisite value out of it, and it's not really a loss for them. Now they don't have to support them moving forward. Because remember, they had them. It's not unheard of, but it's unusual for a sizable third-party publisher with its own first-party studios to be making first-party exclusives for like Microsoft, for instance. I mean, Relic's big game was in recent years was Age of Empires 4. And I think Xbox publishes that game. So I don't know. I don't know if you have any love for Relic. I certainly don't care. It's just an interesting little tidbit as the business machinations continue. So Gearbox to Take-Two, Relic independent. A bunch of other games got canceled this week too from studios that never put out anything yet. And we said that basically we're not going to talk about those very much. So anything you guys want to say about any of this information before we move on?
I wonder how much longer, well, I don't say how much longer Borderlands has, but it is kind of a weird point where there's been 3 games, a spinoff. Now we have the geriatric movie coming out with all of its oddly old stars, which I don't know. It looks fine, but
why are they so old?
I keep wondering that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Very weird.
So yeah, Gearbox. I feel like it makes sense that they're with Take-Two. It feels like they probably are very glad that the way things shook out the way they did. But good to hear Borderlands 4 in
I'm
production.
excited. I love Borderlands. It's funny like how deeply I played all the Borderlands games, and like I've said, never beat any of them. Just get caught in like played them for so long. I think I played Borderlands 3 for something like 80 hours. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to Borderlands 4. There are 2 spinoffs, right? Because, well, more than that, it's like Tales of the Borderlands, the pre-sequel, then you have the Tiny Tina stuff. And yeah, they're trying to make it something. I'm sure Take-Two will take better care of it. We'll see. All right. This was posted over on PlayStation Blog. Game Help, like user-generated so-called community game help coming to PSN. Omar Rosa wrote into us on Patreon and said, hey guys, any thoughts on the community game help updates? I'm surprised it took them this long to utilize user-generated content. I normally use YouTuber PSN profiles and power picks for help, and I'm hoping this is integrated well. Thank you for all you do. Hopefully I can make it to the next live event. Hopefully you can too as well. We'll have more on that soon. So over on the PlayStation blog, they write, introducing community game help, a new enhancement for game help powered by user-generated content. What's interesting about this to me is that this does have a lot of power to be an interesting way to help people, and goes full circle back to the way game help operated during like the Usenet era and the early Internet 1.0 era, where no one knew how to make money on game help. So you just did it for pride and for the love of the game, as it were. And this, I assume, will be a similar spirit, as opposed to the constant churn of content from some really great sites. Like you said, PowerPix, PSN profiles, these are awesome sites, but they make money on those things. So this gets kind of back to the root. And I do wonder if people have that in them anymore, like doing things just for the love of the game. It will all depend on the users themselves. And of course, how integrated it is, because I think it's going to be integrated not only on your console, but on your phone as well, or in the app. So shout out to this. I don't know. I just wanted to point this out because I love strategy guides. It's how I got started in the industry. And they'll always have a special place with me, even if Dagan thinks I use them too much. Dustin, I was curious if you saw this. This comes from Video Games Chronicle. A lot of people are reporting this, though. Director says Final Fantasy IX references in Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail are a secret amid remake reports. And it says, quote, Final Fantasy XIV director Naoki Yoshida has said that the reason for many references to Final Fantasy IX in the upcoming expansion is a secret. Quote, you may have noticed a lot of Final Fantasy IX references here. The reason is a secret. End quote. Yoshida said this during a PAX East panel about Dawn Trail, which is the upcoming Final Fantasy XIV expansion. And you'll remember, as Video Games Chronicle points out, and as we reported on the show and talk about all the time, Final Fantasy IX remake was very much in the NVIDIA leak back in 2021. So it's certainly real. Now, I'm wondering, do you think that there are hints here about Nine's world seems to be one of the most seldom explored in Final Fantasy, and maybe even lesser remembered. So to see it pop up, I think Final Fantasy IV, for instance, is a North Star for Final Fantasy XIV. You can tell. And Jesus Christ, Final Fantasy 16 is Final Fantasy IV is, I said from the very beginning, a North Star for that too. And the new DLC takes place in none other than Mysidia from Final Fantasy IV. So seeing Final Fantasy IX so overtly referenced usually is, or it could be a sign, rather, I should say, of things to come. What do you think?
Yeah, I wonder if at this point this game has either changed hands or changed scope, just because, as you said, it was in the NVIDIA leak quite a while ago. And the biggest question is, I believe certainly that Final Fantasy IX is being remade to some degree. The question is to what extent now, because we have so many different types of remasters or full-blown remakes, like something like Final Fantasy VII Remake. And so that's kind of the big question with this one, is how far will they take it? Because there has been a re-release of 9 available. I think that's even on PlayStation 5. I know it's available on,
it is. On
Switch.
It's the PC port, I think.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it could be another remake project from Square Enix, which I think is very cool, because I know, as you said, this game is kind of a little more under the radar, but oftentimes I hear people talk so highly about 9, and it's one that I know next to nothing about. I'll be honest, the chibi style of the main characters I find a little off-putting, but it might be one of those things, once you start playing, you just kind of get used to it and it clicks, and then it doesn't bother you anymore. So I'm very curious about this. It's something we've been hearing about for years. So hopefully these teases in 14 end up leading to eventually some kind of reveal. Who knows? Maybe later this year.
Yeah, I do wonder what the scale of it will be, what it will look like. I agree. The aesthetic of the game, from the character perspective, leaves a lot to be desired. At the time, it didn't bother me, but it bothers me more now. But people have to remember what was interesting about 9 at the time was it was late PS1, and we had just gotten 7 and 8. 8 was fairly divisive, although people dug it. By the way, I see it. Do you guys see this error on the bottom? Okay. My bar is like the recording bar is just turned black for me. That's interesting.
Oh, weird.
It's a little scary.
Everything's fine from.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll just leave it go. So people have to remember 6 was kind of steampunk, 7 was pretty industrial, 8 was fairly modern, and 9 was this promise to go back to like guns and sorcery kind of shit. And people were really, really, to get guns, swords and sorcery and stuff like that. And people were really, really excited about that from that perspective, because it felt like we had gone quite a while without a true, armor and magic spell driven sort of fantasy-esque, whatever. Not even high fantasy, because I don't think any of them are truly high fantasy, but that was the promise of 9. And I think based on that, it's somewhat delivered. I haven't played it in a long time. But I regard it pretty well. It would probably be like the 4th or 5th best Final Fantasy on my list, something like that. So you like it. It's fun to play, but might as well wait at this point. Okay. Did you guys see this? It Takes Two, according to our friends over at Gamatsu, 16 million copies sold.
Oh,
16 million?
Yep.
Damn, dude. I can't believe how big this game is. That indicates that the game is big in a way that I certainly don't comprehend.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that from a quality standpoint. I'm not a multiplayer guy. I'm not going to really check it out, and I'm sure it's great. But from that means public consciousness of this game must be greater than I thought. It's not an internal core game, but I didn't realize it made the jump at some point. And when you include subscription models, because I think it was included at some point on maybe Game Pass or Xbox Live Gold, Games with Gold plus PS Plus, and then it's available on EA's subscription service as well. It's reached 30 million players. I'm a little less skeptical. I'm a little more skeptical of those numbers, but 16 million sold is an incredible success for Hazelight. And I wonder if they'll do another game with EA, or do we even know what they're doing next? We must.
I don't think so. I don't think they've announced anything.
No,
not officially.
I know they did. Was it them or another company that did the Brothers remake that just came out?
That is them.
That is them. But yeah. No, yeah, you're right. They are doing the Brothers remake, but that's kind of that's not really their next thing.
It's already out.
Is it
mixed reviews?
Yeah, no, right. His first Star. Okay, so Starbreeze published Brothers, but it was Joseph Fares who made it.
Right.
And so I assume that A Brother's A Tale of Two Sons, the remakes on Unreal 5, publish it. Oh, okay. So Joseph Fares was at Starbreeze, made Brothers as a secondary team, I guess, while they were making. What would it have been? What was that random game that they did a remake? Remember the shooter that EA published it, I think? And 505 Games is the publisher of Brothers. So it'll be the publisher as well of the new game too. Syndicate. Yeah. Remember that game?
See that here.
Oh man, wow.
That game was kind of cool. I played that game at a random event, but I never played the final version of it. God, there's so many random games, right? I had to pull that deep.
That's
what
deep,
is it,
man? That's really deep in there. That's was it Time Shift?
Time Shift. Some of these games are gonna come back to that game Inversion is getting re-released this year, right? Some of these random games are going to be coming back.
Oh man, I hope there's a Fracture remastered.
Oh my god, who even owns Fracture?
To play Fracture again.
Let's see, Fracture game wiki. I don't even remember who published it. Oh, it's LucasArts.
Yeah.
So Disney would own Fracture.
Let's get a Fracture cinematic universe going. Come on.
Fracture, yeah.
You could raise the ground a little, and you could lower the ground a little.
It's just crazy that Fracture was made by the guys that made Fear.
Yeah.
Like the first one, day one or whatever. So, anyway, we're getting
Interesting
into the weeds.
times.
I would love for Fear to come back too. I liked that series, to be honest.
Fear's
with you.
great.
Fear 2 and
Fear
3
3
are
was-
both really
Fear-
good as
Fear
well.
3, I remember being kind of mixed on, but 2, Fear 1 and 2, I really 2 especially had like this spike gun that would like nail people to walls, and I remember being like, that's crazy. This is wildly violent. But no, yeah, I think I don't know, dude. It Takes Two is I know it's huge. Like I know that there are a lot of people who don't play video games who have played It Takes Two, simply because it demands. It really like that game is designed in such a way that it really complements a pairing of like if like one person knows how to play, like has played a lot of games, and the other person really has none or very little experience. It's very onboarding in that way because it's just complex enough to be like an engaging game, but not so deeply like lost in the weeds of itself that it becomes like overwhelming for people who haven't necessarily played it or played other things before. It's really like I remember playing it with my ex, and I remember hearing the same stories of other people playing it with their partners who don't really play. And I don't know if it's It Takes Two or their previous game, or if it's maybe both of them. But didn't they have like a promotion for one of them where like if you wanted to play with somebody online, they didn't even need to buy it?
Yeah, I think that's true. Maybe that might have been with both of them, but I think A Way Out did have that.
A Way Out for sure had it. I can't remember for sure if It Takes. I'm sure somebody in the comments.
And that might be where they're getting the player numbers too, as well. Like
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But 16 million copies sold though is pretty.
It's crazy.
That's congrats. It really deserves it because that game's really good. I think it was my game of the year that year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I never got through it. I did try to play A Way Out with my ex, but we just couldn't do it because she just wasn't proficient enough at games. Where I was
A Way Out is I would say a little bit more complicated.
Yeah,
just because it's more contemporary.
Like Micah would definitely be able to play. She might have played it with her ex, I think, actually, because they both. This is the first time I've ever dated, or not dated. I'm married now, but had ever been with a person who plays games. So it's like a totally new experience for me to like be like, I don't have to teach you anything, or like you care and you have a fundamental understanding outside of me of this stuff. Should take better advantage of that. What were you going to say something, Dustin?
I was going to confirm there's a friend's pass for It Takes Two. So you can, if your friend owns a copy and you don't live close and you can't do couch co-op, you can play for free online with just one copy. So 16 million copies sold. Then there's certainly many, many more players than that played through that friend pass.
Yeah, like 16.
He's doing his little calculator math off screen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like even at you're looking at like probably $40 million in revenue. No. Yeah, I was gonna say, even if you looked at just like games bought on sale at like $5 or $10 when you see it like that, you're probably looking at an additional 40, 50, $60 million in revenue just from that, not to mention the millions you sold when the game was full price. So I'll be interested to see what they do next.
Yeah.
All right. Shinji Mikami. I promised that I was not going to do very many of these kinds of stories. We just talked about this, about how when people start new teams, we're going to kind of let it go until they have something to show, unless they're notable. Well, this is one of those examples where that's really, truly notable. Mikami has started a new studio in Japan, and it's apparently called Kamui Inc. Kamuy Inc. Like INC. Kamui, I guess. And so, of course, Mikami was one of the founders of Tango Gameworks, but before that was at Capcom for many years, and is well known for being the director of the original Resident Evil, or Biohazard in Japan. He also directed other Resident Evil games. He directed Dino Crisis and so on and so forth, and executive produced a bunch of different things, but ultimately ended up leaving and went first to work at Platinum. So he directed Vanquish, which is one of my favorite games. And then he went over to create Tango. Tango got into bed with Bethesda. Bethesda was purchased by Microsoft. Microsoft ended up having, I guess when the studios were all sold, people were, obviously paid out in certain amounts of money and put under non-competes. So apparently the non-compete for Mikami's over now that he's left Tango. And he was the executive producer of the second Evil Within, but he hasn't directed a game since the first Evil Within, which is 2014. So we haven't really seen him come out of his shell for a while. So therefore, I think that this is pretty notable. And I imagine he's going to get funding very easily and end up with some publisher making some horror game. What do we think about this, Dustin?
Yeah, well, I know he had a big initiative about trying to shepherd in new people, and that was partially one of his goals. But I think he was in and I feel bad for Tango overall. It seems like things may be turning around, but being a Japanese company owned by Microsoft, at least for their most recent game in Hi-Fi Rush, originally being required to only launch on Xbox, basically means you are making a game that no one in your home country is probably going to play, because very, very few people in Japan have Xboxes. So now, obviously, it's totally different. Now you can play Hi-Fi Rush, of course, on PlayStation, Switch, whatever. So, or I guess not Switch yet. But there's
I don't think Hi-Fi will be on the first Switch, probably the second one.
Yeah, probably the second Switch.
Because of it's required to be 60 frames, I would think, for being a rhythm game.
Right. Yeah. So, and two, I mean, you have to imagine too that maybe he wasn't the only founder. Maybe things didn't quite go the way that he wanted. And so now he's just ready to start again with a new company. And maybe he'll be a little more cautious about selling or something like that. But I've never played Evil Within. I know that there's a lot of people that really like that game, both the first and the second. But yeah, excited to see what else he's going to do in the space still.
Yeah, I mean, Mikami's done a really nice job for himself, I assume, because he was with Capcom for all those years, rose to an executive producer and directorial status on a bunch of different games, and then founded Platinum, got out of there, so presumably sold his shares or held on to them or whatever, then founded Tango, sold Tango to Bethesda. Bethesda gets purchased by Microsoft. So I think he's made a lot of really great moves for himself. I hope he has that pent up want to do something, because again, he was producer of Evil Within 2, producer of Ghostwire, which was, I thought, really great and underrated game, and then producer of Hi-Fi Rush, but no directorial stuff in a long while. Chris, do you want to play Mikami's new game? We don't know what it is yet. We don't even know if he has an idea, but do you want to play it?
Yeah, easily. There are very few people with that amount of cash and that amount of history. Just that he would be back in the fray in the way that he seems to be reemerging is exciting. So yeah, I'm definitely down for, at the very least, I'm curious for whatever the hell comes out of this company. But again, we don't know what it is, so it's all I can say is I'm interested.
It's apparently so. Mikami produced Shadows of the Damned with Grasshopper Manufacture. I think this was in between when he was at Platinum and when he founded Tango. And the word of the new studio is in details in the new Shadow of the Damned remake that's coming out. So like he wasn't ready to even talk about it yet. I don't think. Yeah, so I'm excited to see that, by the way. Shadow of the Damned was published by EA, but I think Grasshopper Manufacturer is publishing the 2011 original, but the 2024 remaster, I think, is going to be published by them alone. And so we'll see more of Mikami soon. I think he might even do some press touring for that, in which he'll have more to say about the new team as well. Okay. We had some other news items, but they weren't very important. It didn't seem like it was necessary to talk about those things, considering the trajectory of our news today. So powerful, so many big, powerful items, sales numbers and Mikami's return and Final Fantasy IX and Gearbox and Relic and Stellar Blade. Oh my goodness. But let's get into the games that we're playing. I will just begin and say that I'm playing Final Fantasy VII, or I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake. I beat it. So that's my second time beating it, because I beat it back on PS4 back in the day, but played it, beat it. As I said earlier in the show, we did a Sacred Symbols Plus episode all about Final Fantasy VII Remake, 3+ hours, kind of talking about it again, a redux as it were, because we did an original episode, Dustin and I, back in 2020 on it as well. And so I played the Yuffie DLC, have a lot of thoughts on that, which is also in that episode. And then I started playing Rebirth last night. I played for about a half an hour. I must admit, it had nothing to do with the game. Every once in a while, like once or twice a week, between 9 and 10 or so, I'm in my recliner, I get overwhelmingly tired. Where like I have got to shut my eyes, and I just need to do it for like an hour or two. And so I just went on laid on the couch next to Micah and fell asleep. So it's not the game itself. I was like, I'm not in the zone where I'm enjoying this like I should be, you know. But I am. Yeah. I must say, the way the game starts, immediate questions, immediately. Dustin, is it annoying for you? Well, wait, Chris hasn't played it yet, right? Never mind. I was gonna say, is it annoying for you to beep something so I could just ask you on the air and you could just beep it all out? But I'm not even gonna do it.
Yeah, don't do it.
So that's that. So I'm on Rebirth now. I felt like I might have wanted to take a break because there are certain games that are they're on my cross media bar, and I'm like, I can just bang these out. So Pentiment is one of them. I need to go back to Power Wash Simulator and get the platinum for that because now that it's been patched and fixed. So I need to bang that out at some point. Hi-Fi Rush is on my cross media bar. I need to get to that at some point. Pacific Drive is sitting there downloaded. I need to get that out at some point. But I really was just feeling the energy to get right into Rebirth, especially on how tantalizing I thought Yuffie's DLC was from my perspective. So yeah, I'm excited to be in there now, and I guess I'll be playing this for the next few weeks, so I'll have more to say next week. So that's where I stand. But Chris, let's go to you first. You're also playing Final Fantasy VII Remake. It says you're also playing BioShock Remastered. Good taste.
Yeah, so obviously I'm playing the Intergrade, the whatever that dual package thing, like the upgraded version on PS5 Remake. I figured like, I'll jump into it, and I've blazed through about like 4 chapters before I had to fly out, and now obviously I don't have a PS5 here, so like I'm kind of stuck, which sucks because like I was like actually getting into a groove. I think I'll just fall back into it really easily because I'm more invested in it this time than I was previously, because I think knowing that Intergrade is there at the end of it, and knowing that Rebirth is right there gives me a lot more incentive to just kind of like actually like see it through compared to previous things. But like, yeah, like I'm playing Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm enjoying my time with it. There are things that are clicking with me a lot more this time for whatever reason. It might be, honestly, I think I attribute it a lot to just the better performance on PS5. Sincerely, like I think it's so much more of a joy to play. Like knowing that like, I don't know if there's really any boost to Final Fantasy VII Remake on PS5, but it feels like there is. And that's enough for me.
Certainly a frame rate boost.
Yeah. At the very least, it feels like consistent and smooth, and so I'm really liking it. I'm digging into the combat, and I'm a lot more patient with that stupid fucking weapon upgrade menu that I really still don't like the idea that it's this random galaxy map that has to load in some crazy animation every time you do it. That still really bothers me, but I'm at the very least interfacing with a lot more. I'm finding the combat a little bit more fluid than I think I did last time. So I'm really enjoying Final Fantasy VII Remake so far. But as of where I am, I think I'm on chapter like 9 or something, which is frustrating because I'm playing through certain things and it's like, I know I did this already. I know I did so much of this. So I'm like, damn, I'm still waiting to get to the point where I put it down the last time. But I'm excited to get to that point and finish it up. But while I'm in New York and waiting to get back to my PS5 at home, I decided to jump into BioShock Remastered, largely because unlike you guys, I could not help myself from engorging myself on all that Judas speak, and it got me really in a BioShock mood. So I think I'm probably going to try and run through BioShock and BioShock 2 specifically, because I never actually finished BioShock 2.
It's underrated. Everyone hated that game for no reason. It was totally fine.
I remember not liking... I remember reading about it when I was really young and thinking like, I don't know if I really want to be a big daddy in the context of this universe. Like, I don't know if that's what I'm looking for a BioShock 2. Like, I don't know if that's what I'm looking for. And so I kind of wrote it off for a long time, but it is there. And it is a weird gap in this series that I have literally tattooed on my body. So I think I'll probably try and... I'm playing it all on Steam Deck. So I'm playing BioShock 1 Remastered right now. I'm breezing kind of through it because it's a game I've played like so many times. BioShock 2 I'll probably get through on like the plane ride home or something. And then I'll jump back into Final Fantasy VII Remake. But yeah, I'm in a real BioShock kind of mood at the moment for many, many obvious reasons. But that's really all I've been.
I was gonna say I saw the new screens at least, and it's like, damn, it does look like I mean, we already know that it looks like
Yeah.
BioShock, but I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
I'm gonna fucking eat that game up.
Do you guys
Telling you
feel
right
like
now.
there's some revisionist history going on about BioShock
Yes.
online?
I'm so
Infinite?
glad you brought that up.
It's
yes.
pissing me off big
Me too.
time.
There's a lot of people that people often with the worst takes on Twitter are the ones that don't use any capital letters. You ever notice that? Like they just write things out. They use punctuation, but they won't capitalize anything. Like Gene. And these people typically, I said typically, not always. Gene's within splash damage of that.
Fair enough.
Of the proximity of some of these weirdos. But BioShock, yeah, the revision about it's very weak and shallow. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? There hasn't been a game like BioShock or BioShock Infinite ever since those games were released. Those are some of the most deeply intertwined, philosophical, political, scientific. They're deep and probing, and that's not any different than they were then. Games very rarely ever even remotely ever get on that level of a BioShock or a BioShock Infinite. That's how good it is. It's the Last of Us level good, right? Like that's how good it is. And yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, Dustin, because I've noticed that too. I'm like, what is that? It's because they don't like Ken Levine. You have to start getting used to this. Like people, first of all, a lot of people don't understand BioShock. They think it's like a complete lampooning of it for lampooning its sake, like making fun of the ideology. But anyone who knows deeper than that knows that it's supposed to be a bastardization of it, not like a lampooning of it, like an upside down world. And Ken Levine is like not a far left, like, loon. And I think people kind of get that vibe that the things he touches on and talks about are outside of the norm of game storytelling. And if they can't graft their own opinions onto what it's supposed to mean, then they'll just call it shallow and stupid, or they'll dismiss it as racist like they did with BioShock Infinite or whatever, So I think that it's very similar to what happens to it's very similar to what happens with Neil and Last of Us. People don't like The Last of Us, so they don't like Neil. People don't like Neil, so they don't like The Last of Us. I just think, and we saw that with Jonathan Blow recently too, when he was on the show. I was reading some of it, like some people just, I think he's a great person and an interesting person, but some people are just like, I can't divorce this from this and this thing he said, and so I'm going to gleam that onto The Witness, and I'm going to gleam that onto this.
It's so confusing though, because like I don't know, man. I've listened to Ken Levine speak a lot, and nothing that he's ever said, both in GDC talks and interviews, and believe me, I've watched so many interviews with Ken Levine. Nothing he's ever said has come across as even remotely controversial at all.
No, I agree.
Like I don't know. Like even when he's going into the politics of like what inspires some of the stuff that he does, it's never like. It's hard for me to even find anything to glom onto in that realm. And I do think, look, I do think there are people who like have certain preferences that I think make perfect sense as to why maybe they're not as big into BioShock, like where, it's definitely not a System Shock 2 level immersive sim, because it's not really trying to be that. And a lot of people look at it kind of like as a step down in that regard. And that's fair enough if that's kind of like the gameplay systems that you engage with the most. I love immersive sims as well. And I wouldn't really consider BioShock an immersive sim. It's something else. It's something different, and it's something a lot more, in my opinion, just narratively fulfilling. And BioShock Infinite is like an action game that's very on rails in some ways. It's very linear and very organized. But I don't know. I don't like the implication that linearity implies laziness, or linearity implies like a lack of quality, or because the game isn't necessarily as open as an immersive sim can be, or because the game isn't as open as, as many open games are, that it's somehow of lesser quality. Like it's a really confusing mindset to me. Yeah, there's not a lot of branching paths in BioShock Infinite and BioShock. Yeah. But it's not for that. And it's not really the intent of the game to do that. So I don't know. I feel like people really need to start looking at the intent of the games that they play as well as just how they feel about them, because that intent does matter when you're talking about design and implementation execution. I do think maybe sometimes those preferences of like a deeper immersive sim sandbox might kind of overlap with a general unfavoritism or like a general uncharitability towards Ken Levine that maybe pile onto this like extra level dissatisfaction or extra level of disdain for ultimately no real reason other than their own preferences don't really align with what they're seeing, you know?
Well, I think some of the disdain for Ken comes from, and this is something I couldn't believe that I saw this multiple times, was when the previews came out, there were takes that said, oh, so he laid off all of Irrational and then just made another BioShock game. It's like,
yeah.
This is the very first preview, and every single preview talks about how they're doing this, you know, the narrative Legos, the building blocks and all this stuff. And it's like, you're immediately ready to declare one thing or another about this game. It's like, it's just par for the course for
it's how you know people
conversations on Twitter, but
it's how you know these people don't really deeply engage with the games that they play. Because I mean, look, a lot of games can look like you could look at a screenshot of BioShock Infinite and think it looks like any number of first-person shooters because there's a gun in it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I'm sure it plays somewhat like BioShock. Like, why wouldn't it, if that's kind of Ken Levine's strength of making these kinds of games? But like the idea that it's just BioShock without actually engaging with the deeper levels of why the systems that interplay with the combat and exploration aren't at all like BioShock implies like a direct lack of understanding or an unwillingness to engage with the material. And both of those are equivalently just discardable as far as I'm concerned, you know?
Yeah, it's hard for me to know how a person can look at a BioShock or a BioShock Infinite and play it thoroughly and not understand the caliber of game it is, or the caliber of game they are. Caliber of game they are. Dustin, I thought you were going to bring this up too when you were about to say like, and they also don't like him for this reason. I actually do think a major portion of it, it's not even very political or anything like that. Like, it's that he's known as being very exacting and difficult, I think, in some circles, like, right, like as a creative. And to me, I'm like, yeah, no shit. Do you see the final product? Do you think that just happens in some sort of loosey-goosey creative environment? Are you crazy? Yeah, this is a man that obsesses over screenshots and obsesses over like every little thing about how his game's presented. And I don't know. What do you want? I think that it's important for those kinds of people to be in the industry, and you work for them or you don't. Like, a lot of people that worked for him at Irrational still work for him. They made a smaller team that was frankly much more sustainable, where they could be really slow and just make the game at a very low level, just very low hum for a really long period of time. That's actually a much more sustainable thing than him keeping Irrational together, in which he would have had to shit out 4 games in between now and then or something like that. So
yeah,
I don't see what people's problems are. It's awesome that Take-Two understood that he should just be given stay over in Boston, away from us. You just do your thing here, and we'll check in with you. You know, this game's been in development forever.
Yeah.
People that don't like that, you know, the particular auteur or whatever, keep that energy for Kojima. You don't hear about it because it's a Japanese team, but I've heard about it. And many people have, that he is. Great works of art don't come from an easy leader.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like, I can't think of a single case.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you know, maybe there is something to be said about maybe there is like this perfect kind of person, right? Like maybe there is this perfect person who like has a perfect reputation among their staff, who isn't exacting, who isn't controlling, and it manages to put out a great work of art. Maybe that is a perfect person that exists, but it doesn't necessarily devalue the work of like people like Ken Levine and Kojima, who are like maybe a little bit exacting. Like that, I don't know what BioShock is brilliant. I don't even know how you would really argue that. BioShock Infinite, I understand just from background of understanding how the development of that game went, how it's like kind of a little bit messy, but like, I don't know, like even in that mess, there's a beautiful chaos that I really, I don't know how you could look at BioShock and BioShock Infinite as anything less than fucking stellar masterpieces.
They're mysterious and raw and alive and compelling and fucked up. I still believe that this new game is connected to those games. Like, I don't know, like,
Yeah.
I still believe it. Like, and it's one of the things I'm going to ask him like more explicitly when we talk, hopefully, is like, can you just dispel this notion? Not it's like the only a notion I have, but like, is this somehow connected to those games? Because spoilers, BioShock and BioShock Infinite are connected. So
yeah.
And like there's a time and space loop in that game that can incorporate all sorts of different things. Yeah. So I do wonder that. And that would be dude, that would be fucking sick, in my opinion.
It would be crazy.
Because it's been dormant for so long. It's totally perfect. You know, it'll have been, by the time this game comes out, probably 12 years since Infinite. So that's plenty of time to do something. But I also understand if they wanted to detach themselves and do something separate. Plus, there is a BioShock game in development. I don't know if it's ever going to come out, but it's been in development for a long time.
Yeah, I would personally like it if it was its own, because it would be awesome to see it tie back into those other games. But at the same time, I think years of cinematic universe interconnectivity has kind of jaded me to the point where it's like, I really want standalone things again. And if this can be like an amazing standalone thing, then I'm more than happy to see it. But also, as somebody with a BioShock tattoo, I would smile. I would smile.
Fair enough.
At the thought of interconnectivity.
All right. Finally, Dustin, we got off on a tangent there about all sorts of things. That was fun, though.
Oh, it was good. Dustin,
what are you playing?
Yeah, I'm still playing Rebirth. I'm at the point where I'm feeling frustrated a little bit that I'm still playing Rebirth. It feels like it keeps going. When did this game come out? Has it been over a month now that I've been playing this?
I actually don't know when it came out.
Rebirth release date. February 29th.
So yes,
I've been playing it basically.
Oh, that's right. It was Leap Day. That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, I said this last week. I thought I was close to the end, but I also didn't have a ton of time to play with traveling to New York and being gone most of the time. So I am really trying to just finish things up. I'm feeling fatigued by it now at this point that I just want to be done, which not that it's by any means bad. In fact, I'm still so incredibly impressed that there's still so much stuff in this game that it's a bit overwhelming. So I'm going to finish up the story, and then I think the next game. So I'm going to try 2 games at once, just because they'll be two at once. Let's go. I'm gonna on Steam Deck. I'm gonna play Chrono Trigger, and then on my PC, I am gonna play Dragon's Dogma 2. So
you've never played Chrono Trigger, right?
No, never played.
I'll be interested to see what you think of that game.
Yeah,
it's a really, really special game. I know people think I'm crazy. I do think it's a little overrated, but it's a great must play game if you're a fan of the genre, which I know you are. So.
Yeah. So yeah, just those 2, and then it's tough. I tried to ask Brad. I'm like, Brad, this is where I'm at in Rebirth. How much longer do I have? And he's like, I'm not telling you. Dude, come on. I have no idea how much to perfect. Like, can I beat it this weekend? Maybe. I don't know.
The trophies will probably tell you if you look. They're
that's true. Big. I've been a little scared to check though, but it's probably fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to get deeper into it. I thought the intro was really fun. I watched the previously on video that's included in Rebirth. That's it's like Red 13 giving you the information about what's happening. So narrated by, as you might want to say. Well, I'm excited to get deeper into it, and I'll have more to say about it hopefully next week as well. Jacob George wrote into us and said, "Hey fellas, just wanted to write in with a PSA regarding the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Platinum. The recent 1.02 patch glitched a late game side quest and rendered it impossible to complete. The side quest is required for a couple of trophies, and thus the platinum is currently unattainable. Huge bummer considering I had just reached the quest on patch day after 80 plus hours. There have been reports that rolling the disc version of the game back to the previous patch fixes the issue. Another point in favor of physical media. Dustin," he says. Anyway, congratulations on 300 episodes. Surreal that I've been listening to Colin for almost 10 years now. Too bad my first write-in has to bring ill tidings. Thank you, Jacob, for writing in for the warning. This is one of those games where I'm glad for other people to know, and that's why I wanted to say it, but I personally don't give a shit about the trophies in this game. I will get what I can, but I'm not going to go out of my way to get annoying ones. I'll worry about that at another time. I don't want to annoy the fucking shit out of myself the first time through Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And I'm pretty sure you have to play it twice to get the platinum anyway. So
I think so.
With that, because I think you have to beat it on the harder difficulty that's only available after you beat the game, which is the same as the first one. So I get annoyed when games do that, but I don't get annoyed when games do that I care about. like deeply, you know? So if there's like a game if there's a game that I'm like, I don't want to play this game twice, but I have to play it twice. But when it's a game that's like, no, we're protecting the sanctity of the original playthrough, there's simply nothing you can do. I kind of also respect that. And it's kind of like protects me from myself, saves me from myself in some way. I wonder if there's any intent behind that. To like, that's an interesting level of meta engineering to be like, don't worry about it because you can't get them all this playthrough. So just play the game. That annoys everyone on one side of the coin, and the other, it protects your playthrough. The Last of Us Part 2 did that too, because you had to beat it on New Game Plus. But I don't give a fuck about the trophies in The Last of Us either. So, okay. All right, let's get into the news. Just a few items that I wanted to write out this week for us to expand on for the audience. We'll end, of course, with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas after that. A somewhat unremarkable episode 300 from a news standpoint, but I can't just create the news. I don't know what you want me to do. Do you want me to just manufacture the news?
Yeah, we could just lie.
I could lie.
Yeah,
I could lie. And maybe I will sometime. Something in this podcast is a lie. It's like in Final Fantasy VI, the town of Zozo, where everyone lies to you. Gotta be very careful. Okay. Number 1. Thanks to the Eagle Eyes, a website Game Rant, we have what we deem confirmation that Sony-owned Team Bend is working on a live service title of some sort. And for what it's worth, this podcast was informed by a trusted source some time ago that Bend was indeed investigating a service game approach for their new title. So this all makes sense to us. As noted by Game Rant, job listings for gigs at Oregon-based Bend Studio openly discuss live service expertise. A project manager opening, as illustrated by the website, says the following in part, quote, lead our agile strategy and processes in alignment with our studio goals, the specific needs of our teams, and key phases of development, end quote, with, quote, pre-production, production, live services, end quote, in parentheses. But it gets more explicit. Not like that. The applicant should have, quote, hands-on game development experience in leadership roles, shipping AAA live service games, end quote. Finally, the applicant should also have, quote, experience redefining studios from traditional box product-focused game development into live service development studios in a key leadership role, end quote. So you can see that perhaps to survive, Bend is likely in the process of morphing into something other than what it has traditionally been for decades now. Sony purchased Bend in 2000, but it was founded in 1992 and was once known as Eidetic. It became Bend Studio, known colloquially as Sony Bend, after being purchased. Its name an ode to the city in which it's headquartered. Not unlike now defunct teams London Studio, Liverpool Studio, and Japan Studio are still operating Santa Monica Studio. Sony purchased Bend after it delivered its first game in its iconic Siphon Filter franchise, which first launched in 1999. 6 more Siphon Filter games followed by 2007, when the team then pivoted to handheld work, launching 2009's Resistance spin-off Retribution on PSP and the well-regarded Vita launch title Uncharted Golden Abyss, which came out in Japan in 2011 and in the West in 2012. Their 2019 open world third-person shooter, Days Gone, sold very well, but didn't light the world on fire, and attempts at a sequel were scrapped as the company underwent an exodus of many key positions, including its longtime director, producer, and lead designer. Though Bend has acknowledged its new game is a brand new IP, that's about as much as we know about it. Perhaps we'll see more later this year, as it has been 5 years now since Bend launched a game. This was the big thing that I wanted to say, is it snuck up on me, but it's time for Bend to go. Like they need to release something. Now we know there was are we going to spin up Days Gone 2? Are we going to do Siphon Filter? Are we going to do these other things? We know that that's not happening. We know the new game's a new IP unless they are lying to us explicitly about that. And we know from this job listing or these job listings, Game Rant pulled up and examined that they're hiring for live services. I was told, like I said, by someone quite a while ago that was the direction it looked like they were going to go into. It seemed to make more sense then than it does now, actually, that what I was told, just because we know that they seem to be paring back in some way. But perhaps this might be one of the games that shows promise, if it is indeed a game as a service. I think it's pretty obvious that it is. Chris, what do we think? Bend moving to this space, is it perilous? Does it explain why they weren't the studio that was closed, because they have something ready to go or maybe soon to go, and then we can kind of gauge their success or lack thererof from there?
Yeah, I do think that explains some of it. I think ultimately, though, I don't know. It's such a strange lens to view this through now that they've pared back this kind of live service model, because you have to assume that whatever they have cooking is deep enough to it's deep enough to consider launching, or at least continuing on with, in an era or in a period of time where the Last of Us multiplayer project was just not considered that. That's what really kind of is twisting me around here, because it's just like, how could, and maybe I'm really underestimating Bend in their ability to output a game of such quality, especially from a live service perspective. Because when you think of live service, you really do think, you imagine that the core focus is gameplay, and from a lot of the Bend games that I've played, they don't necessarily have the strongest, in my opinion, grasp on really compelling gameplay loops. So that like it's shocking to me that whatever they're working on is compelling enough for them to continue moving forward, but also so compelling that even Naughty Dog couldn't get a Last of Us multiplayer project working in a way that would have also been that. It's really confusing to me, but I wouldn't say I'm necessarily excited for this, because I don't know. Bend. I didn't like Days Gone. I don't think that's a secret. People know this. I don't know what they're aiming for here. I don't know what type of game it is, outside of the fact that there are obviously live service elements in it. Maybe they are. Maybe it's narrative driven anyway, and maybe there is just some live service elements to it that they need to hammer in, and maybe because of that, it isn't necessarily as heavily into the live service space as we assume. It's pretty light on information here, but I'm not thrilled at the idea of a Sony Bend live service. I will say that it's not tickling me in the right ways.
What do you think?
I don't know how you feel, but
Yeah. Well, Bend is an interesting team in that at least for me, when I think of them, I can't think of them as having a strong core identity like the other teams. I mean, sure, of course, Siphon Filter earlier on, but they kind of spent a lot of time, I don't want to say being a support team, because those spin-off games aren't necessarily like, they're not supporting another team, but they are making other teams' IP for the side project console, I guess, as opposed to main console games. And then, Days Gone is a conflicting release. I haven't played very much of it, but obviously pretty shot at launch in a lot of ways. And then once there was a lot of updates, and then particularly the PS5 version, or at least the PS4 update that let the PS5 power do it at 60 and stuff, seemed to change a lot of people's opinions, and also the PC release. So then, of course, there's the exodus that you mentioned, Colin, the write-up of a lot of their core team and talent going out the door. And so the way this reads to me is that Bend, though, the as far as at the higher end of people that stayed, it was kind of a pivot point, or at least it sounds like they can either keep doing the same thing that they're doing, which so far, I mean, between 2011 with Golden Abyss and then 2019 Days Gone, huge break in between, Days Gone 2 not greenlit. So I'm sure that they were concerned about being on the chopping block. So they knew they needed to come up with something that may appease Sony leadership, particularly live service. Sounds like something that they knew that Sony was actively interested at the time. I'm not trying to say that they they were only doing it in order to survive, but I'm sure there was some element of that. And so when this game gets revealed, I'm just wondering if we're going to see something unlike what we would expect from the team that made Days Gone, just because at that point, with a lot of leadership gone, it is a moment to reinvent yourself with a new leadership, a new game, and a new style too, being live service. So once it's revealed, I think we'll get a better idea. And I would say this is definitely, no matter what, shaky ground for them.
Yeah.
Especially if this game isn't a success.
Yeah. You have to imagine too that like the makeup of that team is probably very, very, very different than the team that shipped Days Gone. This is definitely like and we talk about it in regards to Naughty Dog, and how like Naughty Dog changes drastically, and how like even the modern Naughty Dog era is a far cry from the team that composed them when they were making Crash and Jack and all that stuff. But and maybe this could be like maybe this could be like a rejuvenation point, where maybe this could be the point where Bend really finds their identity again. Like we don't really know, but they've got a lot to prove, I think, or at least to me.
I have a few theories, or not theories, but just you can kind of really garner some interesting information, I think, from just the few quotes that Game Rant shared. And the information that I was told about them investigating that, I was told that on background, obviously, so I wasn't really comfortable reporting that myself. But now that someone else is, saying it, it's like, well, this kind of comports with what I think it might be happening over there. So I'm going to be very interested to see how that plays out and if it actually happens like that. But it seems like they're really saying it. There's a specific quote where it's the third thing they say, and it's that they're kind of morphing into the team. So, Chris, you brought up like the world where Naughty Dog's game gets canceled, this game goes forward. And Naughty Dog had said at the time that we would have to change ourselves to support a game like this and really no longer make the games that we want to make, which is an important point to this.
That's true. Yeah.
And I think when you see something said here, it says, quote, have experience redefining studios from traditional boxed product focused game development into live service development studios in a key leadership role. So it's asking for a producer level or some sort of, GM or something, whatever it's seeking, that has done that, has taken a studio from a traditional point of view, single player games, and made it into a game like where it's going to make one game and kind of everything's going to revolve around it. So it does kind of comport when you look at it from that perspective. It's like, okay, they're comfortable doing that to Bend. They're not comfortable doing that to Naughty Dog. And that makes some level of sense. But I also think knowing that single player games are the Sony level single player game at the highest levels costs a lot of money, sells a lot of copies, and there are major expectations. And because of the increased time and money and the necessity of these games being great, you might look at it and say, like, we have kind of fewer slots where we can really make an explosive, like 2 or 3 a year, where we can do like this really explosive release from first or second party, big AAA game. We want to make sure that our highest caliber studios are going in those slots. Bend is not one of those studios. And so there's no reason for them to make a first party single player game for us, because those slots are taken by Naughty Dog, Insomniac, Santa Monica, and so on and so forth, Guerrilla, whatever. And it's like, where we don't need, unfortunately, because I actually do think Days Gone is really good. I would have liked to see a Days Gone sequel, and I loved that it was wrapping in a siphon filter and stuff. I thought that was really cool. And I was disappointed that they weren't going to continue with it, but I understand it, because though I liked it, comparable to everything that came out around it, it's not Ghost of Tsushima. It's not The Last of Us Part 2. It's not any of these kinds of games, or Death Stranding, or whatever comes from Sony published, the Sony publisher arm. And so I think that they're comfortable saying, like, we can keep this asset, and it's probably relatively cheap comparable to a lot of Western teams, because Bend's a pretty big place actually, but no one lives in Bend to be a game developer. The people that work there are probably a lot of them are probably lifers in the lower ranks and build up their resume and then go to other places. But you can kind of keep cost of living there down, because the expectations aren't you're going to pay us these major salaries. We're not high caliber players in your family. And so they look at that and say, like, let's just have them make a game. Maybe we can make a little bit of money on them, and we don't have to worry about nurturing a single player game out of them that's going to have to stack up to our 6 or 8 studios that make great single player games. We just don't need them to do that anymore. So that's kind of how I read it, if it's true. Now, I think you guys make a great point. I think Days Gone shown in some way from a gameplay perspective for me, but it was very loose and it was an arcadey third-person shooter, really. I mean, it wasn't anything special or unique. There was nothing unique or interesting about it. It was just totally, it was good enough from that perspective, if not fun. But not something you build a game as a service around that's going to matter. So I will be interested to see what perspective, engine, mechanics, all of that they're going to do. And maybe we'll learn about that soon. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the new Bend logo on a splash screen at some time this year. Not for a game that's coming out this year, but maybe to be shown.
Yeah.
Because we're going to get fair game. Well, no, we're getting Concord this year for sure. So we're going to still have fair games out there. Death Stranding 2. There's really not that many, Wolverine. I don't know. It'll fit in there somewhere. And we'll find out soon enough. But yeah, good eye at Game Rant to find that. Okay. Number 2. Final Fantasy XVI's anticipated second piece of paid DLC has both a name and a price. It's called The Rising Tide, and it will come to PlayStation 5 on April 18th. Not too far from now. So here's the rub. As you'll recall, Final Fantasy XVI launched exclusively on PS5 in June of 2023, where it blew through 3 million copies sold in only a week, though it was reported that the game failed to reach the higher end of publisher Square Enix expectations. Nonetheless, its release was followed up in late 2023 by a piece of DLC, Echoes of the Fallen, in which, quote, Clive and company encounter a group of suspicious traitors. Their trail leads them to a long-abandoned fallen tower known as the Sage Spire and the terrible secrets that await within, end quote. You can buy it right now for $9.99, and the content from the DLC takes place in the shadow of the final battle, where you can unlock new story sequences, quest battles, gear, and so on. Now, according to a press release, the second piece of DLC, The Rising Tide, quote, unlocks an all-new story, battles, side quest, weapons, accessories, level cap, and more, adding a new depth to Clive's journey before the exciting conclusion of Final Fantasy XVI. In The Rising Tide, an unmarked letter arrives to Clive at the hideaway containing a request to rescue the dominant of Leviathan the Lost. This new DLC takes Clive and his companions to the hidden land of Mysidia, of Final Fantasy IV fame, to uncover the tragic history of a forgotten people, end quote. Alongside this DLC's launch on April 18th, Square Enix will deploy a patch for all players of the core game as well. Are you going to play this, Dustin? Check this out.
I want to do a full replay of 16 where I'll play both of these DLCs, but I'm waiting for PS5 Pro. I mean, I imagine at that point, dude, a perfect 4K or upscaled 4K 60, and who knows, maybe higher. PS5 Pro isn't quite revealed yet, but at that time, I'll play both of these. It's tough, and we've had this conversation before, but I'm not really into DLC that happens in the middle of a game, and I understand that in certain scenarios it doesn't quite work, but this one, I've been wanting to go back to Final Fantasy 16 anyway, so if I'm already there, then I'm absolutely gonna play these. But I think Brad played the first one. He said it was great, so I would imagine this one's pretty good too. And $9.99, that seems like a perfectly fair price for a little extra content.
Yeah, I concur. And I'd like to replay it as well, but I think I'll just do it far in the future. I don't think I'll get to it anytime soon. I really enjoyed it. I'm happy about there are rumors that, well, not rumors, because I think they said it. Naoki Yoshida, I think, said it at the PAX panel about Final Fantasy 16 PC. We know that's coming. And he said after that we're going to look to bring it to other consoles. And I was like, that's great news, because I'm thinking that I think people are reading that in the Xbox, which would be fine. And I think it could end up there. But I'm thinking Switch 2 would actually be a pretty great place to put it too, if they can make it happen and make it run. But more people need to play Final Fantasy 16, because I think it's an extraordinarily good game. And It's a bummer that its exclusivity has limited its audience in some way, even just from being on PC, where it probably should belong. So I'll be excited to see that. Chris, I don't know if you're interested in checking this out, but
I think so. Like, I liked 16. I put 30 hours into it, which is at the time, I think probably the longest amount of time that I'd put into a single modern Final Fantasy game in forever. So like, I am interested in it. I just think I'm at a point where it's like, I think I would want to wait for like not a definitive edition, but like just some version of the game where all this stuff is kind of put together, and especially for PS5 Pro, because I do remember it running kind of poor. I remember it running poorly, not in a way that necessarily bothered me, but one that I would definitely prefer not to experience. And I am saying that largely because I'm in the middle of Final Fantasy VII and I'm really feeling it. And, by the time I'm done with Rebirth, I feel like I'm probably going to be in such a zone with it that I might be, I don't know, I might be curious enough to, at that point, just kind of jump right in, because I'm already like ingratiated in the vibe of that world anyway. And I know that they're different worlds, but you know what I mean? Just the Final Fantasy type experience. So I don't know. I'm going to play it by ear with that, but I have been meaning to go back and at the very least finish 16, because I put so much time into it. It's like, I just remember hitting that wall where like I got to meet all these new people in town and being like, I don't care about this town. I just want to go do crazy. I want to do these crazy boss battles that are so fucking insane that I can't look away from the screen, and I got to I don't want to pick up dirt and deliver it to somebody, like it's not, I feel so over-equipped in a game like that to be doing such ridiculous shit. Like I'm dressed to the nines. I've got like all these heavy swords on me. I'm like with a team of like superpowered fucking demons basically, and then I'm off picking up dirt off the ground. Like, you do this. There's I don't know if it's ludonarrative dissonance or what, but like there's always this like why are you relying on me to do this?
Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense. Yeah, like my time can be better spent in game.
Yeah.
If you think about the situation.
But I liked a lot of that game, so yeah, I definitely want to go back to it. And maybe by the time I go back to it, this will all be out, and then I will have no reason not to. So yeah, for sure.
All right, finally, number 3. It's another week, which means it's time for us to talk about new PlayStation Plus games. This time, we have a trio of games to discuss that are en route to PlayStation Plus Essential, meaning that all active PS Plus subscribers, regardless of tier, can download these as part of their subscriptions beginning April 2nd. Add them to your download list for access after the month is through. The biggest game of the bunch is the one I personally evangelized heavily on the show, and that's Immortals of Avium for PlayStation 5. Immortals of Avium is a Magic-themed FPS from developer Ascendant Studios and publisher EA, and it launched in the late summer of 2023. Second up is Minecraft Legends from developer Mojang and publisher Xbox. This RTS action spin-off of the mega-popular Minecraft franchise came to both consoles back in early 2023. Finally, for PS4 only, comes the 2021 action platformer roguelike Skull, that's with one L, the Hero Slayer from developer Southpaw and publisher NeoWiz. As has been the case in recent months, there's an additional freebie for PS Plus, this time in the form of Overwatch 2's Mega Bundle, which includes a bunch of skins and more. Once active, you'll have until May 6th to claim these games and items. So, there's that. No more excuses. Immortals of Avium, available on PS Plus. Play it. I'm telling you, play it. Give it a go. Tell me it's not fun. Some of you will because you're fucking obstinate. But for those that like to enjoy themselves, just like me from time to time, I think Immortals of Avium, the price of free, you should have paid the price of $60 for it. And then we would have had a sequel and a steady team instead of these guys that are probably going to die a slow death into the realm of contract work. But nonetheless, glad to see them getting a little bit of money here and getting some shine. Hopefully it brings more people's attention to Immortals of Avium. I think Minecraft Legends, it's not my kind of game. That's a nice selection as well. This is a pretty good month, actually, in my opinion. But what do you guys think? Chris, anything for you here?
Yeah, definitely Immortals, because I've been just curious about it, and I just haven't really gotten around to jumping the gun on it. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be playing that. Minecraft Legends, I'll add just because there is something about it. Like I'll add it to my library. I don't know if I'll play it, but like there's something about Minecraft that I kind of feel. I don't know if you feel this way too, Colin, with certain things, but like I feel kind of guilty with not engaging with something that is this big at all. You know, like Minecraft is so big and so huge. And I remember dabbling a little bit with like original Minecraft back in the day, but like the fact that it's still so persistent and still so huge, and I've not really sampled any of these other versions of it, I feel weirdly not obligated. Obligated is a strong word, but like, I don't know, there's something about it that piques my curiosity enough that I'm like, yeah, I'll probably at some point, maybe when this release schedule gets a little bit slow, where I'm like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll try Minecraft Dungeons or something like that. Because they had that story mode too, right? That like that Telltale kind of. Yeah, I wasn't really interested in that, but they keep doing these other things where they're dabbling in different genres, and I'm a big champion of that. I like it whenever, like, Gears Tactics was a big one for me, where it's like, oh, this is so cool. This makes so much sense. I wish more studios did this kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, this is a smart thing, and I'll probably dabble with it at some point.
Yeah, there was Minecraft Dungeons, Minecraft Legends, Minecraft Story Mode.
Yeah.
And then the original Minecraft. I accept this is why when people say, like, why do you limit yourself to just playing mostly on PlayStation? It's like, because I want to know it. And you cannot know PlayStation like I know PlayStation if you somehow also know Minecraft like I know PlayStation. Like, I don't know how you could have possibly spent in other words, I just know that I can only know this one thing really, really, really well from my own experience. And I accept that there has to be a Colin in there's many Collins in Minecraft, or a Colin in this and a Colin in that. It's like, I can't, because anything that I explore like that, I experienced this in a small way with Helldivers. Like, Helldivers fucked my whole schedule up. And I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. It did fuck my whole schedule up as terms of like what I really needed to be doing for playing games, which is why I'm so far behind on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. If I scope that out to fucking everything that I can check out, I would never get to the core of the matter. So I have to just accept. I've said this before, but there was a time early in my career where I began to accept that I cannot play everything, because I really did try for a while to play like everything that mattered. And I remember it was Assassin's Creed specifically where I was like, I can't even worry about this series. There's just no time for this series. Like, it's
Good
over
pick.
for me.
Good pick to skip.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Where it's like, I can't go back. I can't. And I don't want other series to fall into that hole. Like, there are certain series I'd like to get out of that black hole, like Yakuza or something like that. But anyway, I'm going on and on. But that's kind of how I feel about that, where I'm like, I can just accept that I'm not going to play Minecraft. Someone else will play it.
Right.
and they can tell you about it.
Yeah.
This Skull game looks pretty sweet. I'm watching. This is IGN's review. I just have it on silent. And Colin, I'm surprised you're not. Are you interested in this? It's like a nice action pixel art 2D game.
Yeah, it looks cool. Again, just there's
Too much.
many of those,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and I this might be one that I'm missing that I'm going to lament as I lament people missing games like Batboy and so on and so forth, and Cyber Shadow and on and on. So yeah, it could be one of those games. But again, I have this immediate need to once Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's done, I really would like to get into Pacific Drive, but I'd like to bang out some of those Xbox games too, if I could, and just get those done as well. All right, so those are available again April 2nd. You can begin downloading them. You have till May 7th, so obviously claim them and add them to your list. All right, we're moving quick today, which is fine. Let's get into listener inquiries. 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience over on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. The slow news time. We'll get into some of your greater questions here. We'll start with Chutbuggin. Says, greetings, Bussy enjoyers. Considering the success of RPGs over the last year or so, is it safe to say that we're going through an RPG renaissance of sorts? Between Baldur's Gate 3, Rebirth, and now Dragon's Dogma 2, it seems as if there's no shortage of quality to choose from in the genre. Dustin, what are your thoughts here as an RPG guru? Do you feel like we're at a high point in the genre? And then I guess holistically, because you have your JRPGs and your action RPGs and your Western RPGs and your open world RPGs and all the rest. So you can take it however you'd like.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting overall to see so many people into all different types of RPGs. And it's crazy now with Baldur's Gate 3, even the most niche RPGs of, well, maybe not the most, but pretty niche in terms of like computer style RPGs becoming massive successes, just shows that how big this style of game is. And obviously RPG is such a wide range, but it's funny too, because we've talked about on the show how it kind of felt like every game was becoming an RPG and not necessarily in a good way. Games like God of War having gear related stats and stuff like that. And while I think that does get annoying, if the inclusion of RPG elements into many games has opened people up to playing more hardcore RPGs, then awesome. That's great. Because clearly people are not afraid of them like they used to be. Not necessarily afraid, but I think that for a long time, because RPGs and particularly JRPGs were so hardcore for a while, that I think that scared people away from them. So to have kind of people slowly be brought into the fold and be like, hey, these games aren't necessarily as crazy as you thought in terms of like thinking about different stats and games, of course, like, dude, Elden Ring, I think Dark Souls in general, but also Elden Ring, showing people like, hey, stats can be really fun and cool and not necessarily something to be afraid of. So I'm happy. I think it's awesome. And it's one of those things we were just talking about, too many games to play. I mean, that's how I feel right now. This year in particular, there are so many games suited directly to my interests in a very quick succession, like Dragon's Dogma 2 is here now. And I'm like, man, I really want to fit that in too. So it's good to see. I'm happy to see it, and happy to just see so many people enjoying these types of games.
Well, I'll save my comments until I want to hear from Chris first, because I'm going to pontificate for a minute. Chris, go on. Give me your thoughts here. Are we at a high point for role-playing games?
Yeah, I think as far as like really high profile, really well built stuff, like really, I think so. I think we're at a point where quality is just in this genre is just very, very high. I think like Baldur's Gate 3, definitely not. It's not my kind of game exactly, but like I was more than happy to pay for it, and I was more than happy to give it a shot and understand it's like, oh wow, there's a lot of quality here and this is great. But you know, even though it wasn't for me, I understood objectively like where the quality bar was with it. And Rebirth seems to be doing well, and you know, Dragon's Dogma 2 is huge. Dragon's Dogma 2 I'm really 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 curious about. It's kind of calling me. I think largely because I didn't really get that experience with Baldur's Gate because it was so out of my preferential playstyle and just like how the game operates. It's more of a CRPG in that regard. And so seeing Dragon's Dogma 2 doing well and people loving it, it's really calling me. It's like maybe I can get that experience from Dragon's Dogma. And so I'm really, really looking at it really intensely. But yeah, I think we're in a really good spot for RPGs. It's just a matter of like how far, like how long will this stretch? How long does a golden age last for like a genre? You know, like, because I would argue that we don't really see this type of quick succession explosion for most genres as far as like like last year was huge as far as like just games being great in general. Like we had a lot of great releases, but I think about it in the sense of like the games that I play and the genres that I dive deep into, and I think about like shooters. And the last time we had a golden age of shooters, like I don't even know what year that would even be. You know, like I feel like really like late 2000s. I know Doom 2016 and Titanfall 2 in 2016 were like huge, but like I don't know, like the idea that it's Baldur's Gate and then Rebirth and then Dragon's Dogma 2, that's a pretty strong sequence of releases in a relatively short period of time. Like RPG players are eating really, really good. I think horror is probably like the most recent one that I could think of where horror had that renaissance.
Yeah, too many horror games, like the walking sim, psychological horror kind of stuff. It became very easy to, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's very accessible to make those games on various engines. It's funny because you have my mind going, like it totally interrupted my train of thought internally because I was like, what is the year? No, you didn't do anything wrong. It's like, what is the year of the shooter? It's like, like 2008?
Yeah, 2008, 2007.
Halo 3, Orange Box.
Call of Duty 4, Orange Box.
Yeah, Call of Duty 4. It must be like something like that.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like that's the last time I can remember something like that big. You know what I mean? As far as like universal acclaim and like Portal being in there as a shooter is, you know, dubious, but it's true. So like, I mean, yeah, no question. Like we're in a really good spot for RPGs, and I say that as somebody who only really kind of dabbles in RPGs at a very low, arguably lower level than both Colin and Dustin. But it's objectively obvious to me that, like, you know, Baldur's Gate 3 is fantastic. You know, I know that, even if it's not my style of game. And Dragon's Dogma 2 is looking like it's fucking great too. Even though man, I wish it ran better. Like, I'm so curious. I don't know. I'm scared that my PC isn't going to be able to handle it. Like, I think I'm okay, but like, I'm not 100% sure.
I'm hearing it's mostly that the towns, no matter how expensive your PC suck, but when you're out in the open world, you have a better time.
Okay, so. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a PS5 Pro thing for me. Maybe I don't know. Maybe even that's not even gonna help. Yeah, because that's a CPU thing. Yeah, I don't know. I want to play it, but I don't want to be. I don't want to have a really great experience ruined for me because of something that I know will get in the way. Like if it runs at like 12 frames a second, sometimes it's gonna sink me. You know, I know it, and it's gonna make a great experience sour. And I don't know if I want that. I want to enjoy something. So I don't know. We're in a good spot though, as far as like what the quality of these, the contents of these RPGs are. You know,
I think people have. I guess the main through line I want to say about this is that I think people have opened their minds over the years as to what role-playing games are and what they could be. I think there are certain games that helped do that to wider audiences, because I feel like gaming was more stratified back in the day, to where there's like a strata of very hardcore people. Those are the people that play PC computer role-playing games and JRPGs, and they play KOTOR and all this kind of shit. And that level is not really breached by people that are even playing core games on like shooters and so on and so forth. And there was a strata there, and then there was obviously casual people below that. I feel like everything's kind of been mixed up over the last 2-3 generations, maybe. And I think that there are games that did it. The Mass Effect trilogy did it. Skyrim did it. Fallout 3. I think these are probably 3 of maybe a handful more games that set people's minds towards the statistical depth, the narrative depth, the nonlinearity, the world building, and all of that only or really exclusively these genres and these adjacent genres deliver. Because it's very rare to get a game like The Last of Us Part 2 that's like 25 or 30 hours that is very, very, very AAA throughout. I think it's too long personally. It's very expensive. Instead, like what you do is you make like more static worlds with things to do in them and let people make their own stories, and people to various degrees. There's some very high quality worlds like Witcher 3. There are very low quality worlds like Generation Zero or whatever. And then you go from there. But I think people have really embraced it just by learning about it. And that's why I think a game like Skyrim is so intriguing to people, because that's a cross strata game that everyone knows about, even if they play games casually, though it is fundamentally very hardcore. And people have to wrap their minds around that. That's fun and interesting. That just wasn't the way it was. Casual players weren't accessing Chrono Trigger back in the day. So
Skyrim is probably like probably one of the most important. I would imagine in the top 3 most important games probably ever made, I think. Because that opened up a lot of people, man. Like, I was not playing RPGs really at all before Skyrim. I played Fallout 3, and I remember being like, why am I in a classroom? This sucks. And I turned it off immediately, because the first 10 minutes of every other game at that time were so comparatively exciting. And Mass Effect 2 was like kind of like a breach, but even by the time Mass Effect 2 happened, like Mass Effect 2 was, I don't want to say less of an RPG than Mass Effect 1, but I think most people would tell you that. Like it's definitely more of like an action oriented shooter with deep RPG elements. But like, I mean, that was a lot more accessible at the time. I didn't even really think about it as an RPG when I was playing it. Fable, to like some lesser degree, was just kind of like a fun little sandbox. But Skyrim was the thing that was like, oh, I understand what this is, and I'm going to engage with it in that way. And then I went back to Fallout 3, and then there's no way I would have even bothered with Baldur's Gate 3 if I never played Skyrim. No shot.
All right. Well, I appreciate the write-in, Chut Buggin. I think we are in a great place. I also think this is worth saying too in the postscript is, I think, so each game is its own project. It requires a certain funnel of money and time and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I think role-playing games are getting role-playing games are looked at as, I think, in some case, safe if you can deliver a good experience. So people are looking for games to dump time and effort into. A lot of people don't like the game churn like we do. And so I think it's not to say every role-playing game succeeds. That's not true. But if you can make like a high-quality open world role-playing game, get some press attention and so on and so forth, you should sell just based on that being what it is, because people like it. So I think that at the highest end of game development, role-playing games are probably attracting an inordinate amount of development dollars that are making the high-end product more likely to come out. Like when The Witcher 4 comes out, I was reading today before we recorded that CD Projekt had said that most of their team is now on to Witcher 4. And I was like, that game is going to be fucking huge. I mean, that game's going to be huge, and it's going to make an enormous amount of money. And that's obviously a weird kind of example because CD Projekt is such a special studio, but you just make something like Cyberpunk, you make something like Witcher, you make something like Dying Light or Final Fantasy 16 or Persona 5, right? Or whatever. And it's very, very attractive to people just from a time, money, equity kind of thing. How much value am I getting out of this? I think that's helping role-playing games a lot. We just looked at games differently back in the day. When I was a kid, no one really cared about how long a game was. It was weird. Castlevania 1 is 6 stages. 6. Beatable in 20 minutes. Easy. and like we were just like, that was the nature of the game. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but we take this whole other meta analysis of how long we spend with the game, how much replay values there are, New Game Plus, trophies. And I think role-playing games are just very, very attractive to people through all of those different nexuses.
Well, that was the thing back then too, is that like a lot of it was like replay. Like you would replay the games that you got. Like I remember Crash 2 specifically. I remember the Crash Bandicoot games in general being like this, but like those are really short games. You beat those in probably like 3 hours. Realistically. Like it's not hard at all.
Yeah, and there were times, Chris, where I felt like I didn't get value out of a game, but generally speaking, I felt like I either liked it or I didn't, but it wasn't a value proposition from time spent. And it's just different now. And it's weird because games were way more expensive then, but they were also not a dominant part of our life like they are now. They really, by nature, almost, I mean, I played a lot of video games as a kid, but they're really not as intrusive into your life as they are now. Like there was only so much you could do with ActRaiser or Super Mario RPG or something. Like you're not going to like lose your life to it. There's only so many of those games coming out. So it's overwhelming now. And I think role-playing games have added a lot to that too, but people will get what they want, and that's what they want. I moved this question up because we were talking about Dragon's Dogma, so let's get into this. Genesis Point wrote in, and by the way, about Dragon's Dogma, I have no interest in playing it. I never really did. But now knowing it, knowing the performance issues and stuff, I've just totally written it off. But I'm glad people are liking it. Genesis Point wrote in and said, "Hi, boys. Can we please lay the Dragon's Dogma 2 discourse to rest? The whining was instant and chock full of misinformation. With many an influencer spouting that the microtransactions were pay to win and predatory, anyone with 5 hours into the game will understand that the narrative is false and the items from the MTs, I guess, microtransactions. Can we just say MTs?
Yeah. Was it MTX?
Yeah. Can be brought in-game for a reasonable price. It's embarrassing that well-known people were spreading obvious misinformation. Pay to win in a single-player game is ridiculous, and if it's a problem, then don't engage with the microtransactions. To quote Sacred's very own Mr. Raygun, aren't we all adults? What are your thoughts?" I haven't even engaged with the Dragon's Dogma 2. So Dragon's Dogma 2 is fundamentally single player, yes?
Yeah. Only single player.
Right.
Completely.
Right. Yeah. So knowing that, I saw this about the microtransactions and I'm like, that can't possibly be true. Like if you buy a game and choose to ruin it for yourself by spending more money on it, that doesn't affect anyone else. And thus, I have no problem with the microtransaction existing because it's totally voluntary and there's no advantage other than wasting your own money to buy some of your time back. So you could literally make predatory microtransactions in the single player game in quotes, but I still wouldn't really care because it affects no one else but you. So all you have to do is ignore them. It's not like you're on Helldivers and there's like these crazy game breaking microtransactions where you can buy this amazing gun. And if you don't buy it, then you're at a loss or whatever. But even then, that's not a PvP game. So there's a whole nother level to it. But that breaks other people's experiences. And that's a problem for me. But breaking your own experience should be your right, actually. Whether or not they want to give you, it's like the buyable trophies in Nier Automata. It's very weird, but that is a thing in that game. And
that's
really,
not real money, though.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
in-game currencies.
Money. Just to be clear.
That's true. That's true. So that is a good point. So I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I just don't. I can understand people saying there are different levels of like day one DLC is this egregious, or game passes, online passes were this egregious or whatever. I feel like this doesn't even rate because it's totally voluntary. Even if it was locking things away that weren't in the game, it's still voluntary. And I really only worry about this, Dustin, from the perspective of breaking other people's experiences involuntarily. So
right.
What do you make of that? Am I right or wrong on this?
So, as with everything, there's much more nuance than what's going on Twitter. I mean, first of all, is it annoying that reviewers review the game and then they put in the microtransactions afterwards? Yes.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
That sucks.
Yeah, that's
and
shitty.
It's fucked up. So yes, that is absolutely worth being annoyed about. Also, at the same time, Capcom puts single-player microtransactions in all of their single-player games. Resident Evil 4 Remake, yeah, absolutely, has microtransactions for like the weapon ticket upgrades or whatever. So it's not surprising at all that they would do this. No one freaked out about it then, but for some reason, it was the case in this game. So my big thing, the question for Dragon's Dogma, I don't know the answer to this, but I haven't seen anyone say this, is that if you're going to put single player microtransactions in the game, as long as you don't tune the progression of the game in order to incentivize people to buy them, then I have no problem with it. Like, let's say there was this one resource that it's so obvious, like it's so grindy and so annoying, and they make it really affordable through a microtransaction and they push it in your face all the time, then yes, I'm going to be annoyed with that. Clearly, if it is tuned in a way that they're pushing a microtransaction in a paid game, yeah, that would suck. I don't know if that's the case for Dragon's Dogma. It doesn't sound like it's the case. It sounds purely like the situation that you were saying, Colin, that if you want to willingly choose to pay for these things in order to have to play the game less that you paid for, well, then go for it.
Well, let me jump in here real quick, Dustin, just before I forget to say this, to kind of ask you this, like it's ironic in some way, the dishonesty embedded in patching your microtransaction store into your game post-review also suggests that because the game, and this is kind of the unintended consequences, like the game can't possibly be all shitty, grindy or whatever, because it all got these good reviews and people didn't know that the microtransactions existed. So in some way it forced this honest take, and then you put it in. It definitely is a dishonest move on their part. They knew they were going to do that, and they knew why they were doing it, but it did kind of strip out the idea that there would be anything in the game that would be broken and require some sort of microtransaction. And they can look at that and say like, well, you guys didn't say any, you had no problems with the pacing or like the item availability or anything before we made these available. Yeah. So
that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, the reason why this is a controversy is that there was that quote from the director that, oh, you don't need fast travel in this game because we're going to make it so fun to walk around. You won't need it. And then to my understanding, one of the microtransactions is these fast travel, some kind of currency. So the optics on that obviously are not good, but I don't know. It's people. I don't like microtransactions either, particularly in single player games. I get why people have been burned enough times on shit like this that I understand that there's a quick reaction, especially when they hit it in the reviews. But I really think this is kind of a not a big deal situation. If you don't like them and you don't want developers to put them in the games, stop buying them. That's simple as that. They won't they put them in because they make money. So especially if it's a case where there's really no reason for you to interact with them, just don't buy them and enjoy the game. And it's as simple as that.
What do you think, Chris? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think I largely agree with what Dustin's saying. I think it's not. I didn't even notice the microtransactions in Resident Evil 4 remake when I was playing them. I think I might have glanced over at them, but the fact that they weren't being pushed in my face like they are in a lot of live service games where microtransactions are sincerely a nuisance and somewhat of a problem, kind of inherently made it okay to me. It was just like, all right, well, I'm not really going to engage with this. It's not being foisted upon me. So like, whatever. The people have limited amounts of time, especially adults, and they want to play their games and they want to get a lot of value out of them. And maybe some of them have the income necessary to maybe speed that up for themselves. But in a single player environment, I'm kind of okay with that. Maybe from a purist perspective, I would argue that like, oh, you're not really getting the experience of the game, but like, that's really up to them anyway. The one thing I will say, although I largely agree, the slight pushback that I will say is that like in development, generally, you want to avoid incentivizing something that is obviously the best thing. You see this a lot in like PvP games where like if there's a weapon in the game that's obviously the best weapon, everybody's just kind of going to go for it. And because everybody goes for it, it ends up making the experience stale. And you could argue in some ways that a version of a highly effective weapon in a PvP game translated through the lens of an RPG, a single player RPG with microtransactions is, oh, hey, well, this, in that hypothetical that Dustin was talking about, like, oh, this grindy resource is really, really annoying to get, but it's like $2 for like a lot of it. So why wouldn't you? There would be no real reason for somebody who is well off to not do that. But again, like you said, Colin, because it was reviewed already before that was even in play and no such pacing issues were brought up, I'm led to believe that that's just not true. So in principle, I'm against this, and generally, this is a case-by-case basis thing. I think you have to look at the game, and you have to look at the design, and you have to really, really assess, like, all right, well, is this game pushing me towards these microtransactions? And if the answer is yes, it'll be obvious, and then you can have a real problem with it, and I would understand it. From a principle standpoint, I don't like them being involved in single-player games either, but there do exist really, really great single-player games and really, really great single-player experiences where microtransactions are there and I didn't notice them. And I don't know really what to say about that other than, it's if you choose to engage with that system, then that's really on you.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, with Helldivers and other PvP games, it's not impeding anybody else's experience who didn't consent to that experience. So it's hard for me to get up in arms about this specific thing, although I understand the sentiment of just generally wanting these things as far away from single player experiences as possible. But it's not really, I'll put it this way. It's not influencing my opinion on whether or not to check out Dragon's Dogma. I'm not even remotely considering any of this stuff as I'm making my decision on, like, do I want to play this? Where do I want to play this? The answer is yes, I want to play it. Where do I want to play it? I don't know. Do I want to wait? Yeah, probably, maybe. But nowhere in this purchasing decision is the existence of microtransactions in this game, because as far as reviews and everybody has talked about, it's much ado about nothing.
Yeah, I have a hard time, like, philosophically framing it in my mind as something that I should be upset about in these particular confines, like whatever a game like Dragon's Dogma. Because Helldivers is a good example. We were talking about people breaking the game and giving themselves a shit ton of currency. And it's like, I don't want anyone to be able to do that because it kind of unbalances the game. But if someone was just doing that to themselves, it's like, all right, I guess whatever. It doesn't really matter to me if you unlock better things or better ship upgrades or whatever. But the only way to get that is to also everyone else in your party also gets the ill-begotten credits, and they don't want that. It's like, that's the difference between doing something for yourself and doing something that affects other people. And so, yeah, a game self-contained like Dragon's Dogma 2, totally in and of itself, it's like, I just can't begin to get upset about, really, it's really more of a mirror, like holding up a mirror to yourself kind of thing, in my opinion, of being like, why would you have to wonder about the psychology of a person in some sense? And I'm not saying they're crazy. It's just like, why would you buy a game? So you buy Dragon's Dogma 2 to play it, and then you spend more money to cut out pieces of the experience for yourself. Because that's all you're doing in single player games. You're not giving yourself a benefit against anyone else except for the computer controlled enemies and all the rest. So in some sense, it's like, why does Capcom know, and why do people allow themselves to be taken advantage by Capcom, knowing that you'll spend $60 or $70 on the game and then you'll spend another $30 on things that don't have to be spent money on? It's like, that give you no comparable advantage to a real person. That to me is a deeper question than these things existing at all. Because in other words, it's like, you're spending money to make, it's like, why do you want to play?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
It's like when we had Game Genie and we would do like insane things in games, but it would break it. We understood fundamentally, like, this is not the way the game's supposed to be played. This is stupid, but it's fun to do that. It's like, why would you spend money on a game and then make it as easy as possible?
Yeah.
It's strange. So I don't know. I don't really give a shit about this personally, just because it doesn't affect anyone else. And I do think that, from what, I don't play multiplayer games really, as you know, but my outside looking in view is that this has been somewhat well calibrated in multiplayer spaces, where games understand that there's a fine line between all this stuff. And if they fuck around in that regard, they're going to lose their customers. I think they could be more cavalier in single player games by using the examples I have of being like, it really just ruins the game for you. Why do you care? So, Dustin, I do think you have the only salient point about design, where it's like, as long as the game isn't, like, what would have been amazing and really damning is if the Dragon's Dogma 2 stuff came out and it's, man, like, damn, this game is a grind, dude. Like, this game, there's something about this game where it's just the currency's fucked up, the in-game economy's fucked up. Then I'd be like, yeah, they predicated the whole design on making you buy the microtransactions. But since That could have been their intention if you want to play 4D chess. If you believe that publishers do that sort of thing sometime, is to not trick anyone, but rather to say like, we have guarded ourselves against this by knowing that you are not going to complain about it. Doesn't it have like amazing scores? So
yeah, it's like 89, I think.
It's pretty good.
Now.
Pretty good.
Oh.
The thing that I don't understand, and maybe I don't have a lot of experience doing this necessarily, but because it's a single player game and there are assets presumably in the game that you pay to unlock, right? I would imagine that that's how it works, unless is there like a separate download SKU for like every individual? Because my thing would be like, wouldn't you just be able to just go offline and just mod those things in anyway?
Oh
like
yeah, on PC, yeah.
I could be. I don't know how they have it set up. So like maybe there's a way to avoid that, but like that's more on my mind, where it's like, what would even be the incentive to pay if there's surely a way to there's a way to just mod the shit out of this thing.
I said the game was strictly single player, which is technically true. There is the element where there's the pawn system where your pawns can go and fight in someone else's world. Like you can hire them out and they'll like bring stuff back for you. So there is a
right.
live service element. I don't know, live service, not even the right term, but an online element between you and your friends. So
okay.
I don't know if it requires always online, but there's probably some kind of anti-cheat baked in. So
yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because that was kind of a question where it was like, what? Microtransactions in single player games don't make sense to me for that reason. Because it's just like, you could just, dude, my Tekken 8. My Tekken 8 file is modded to shit. It's ridiculous. So many I have like the most absurd characters in that game that should not exist. And I didn't have to pay for any of it. So, I don't know.
Let's keep talking about games and money. Ninja DC wrote in. Said, hey CDC, when will Sony learn the lesson of the power of the $40 or $50 release and release more budget games in that category? There is the recent success of Helldivers 2, but also past first-party successes like Miles Morales being a smash hit launch game and Ratchet & Clank Remake being the most successful game in the series. Even in the third-party space, we can see how successful the $40 Spyro and Crash bundles were, contrasted with the middling success of the full-price Crash 4. There is significant consumer demand for budget AAA and premium AA games in this price range. When will Sony start catering to this market demand? I personally think they've made the decision that they're not going to largely do this. I think in some sense they will with maybe games as a service stuff, but you're bringing up success stories in that space, but I would argue that there are plenty of failures or failure to launch kind of games in that space. Remember, Medieval launched at that level and sold 500,000 copies. Shadow of the Beast remake launched and sold even less than that at that similar price point. We had middling kind of AA, premium AA games in the multiplayer space like Drawn to Death and Kill Strain that failed. I think people just make so you're right. There are these examples, but there are failures. And I don't think it's necessarily guaranteed that it's the price point and the game being good. But I think squeezing the most out of every game now is going to be really maximally important. Like I wonder if Ratchet & Clank would have even been sold at that price today. If they would have even considered that, because they could have probably made more money even on fewer units sold. And I don't know. So I would like to see Sony explore this space. But we were saying earlier, there are so many ways, there are so many assets, more money being spent, more time. You want to maximize the amount of money back. Carving out that space seems really fun and fine. But again, I don't think it maximizes the amount of money they could make. And I think we saw this in the Insomniac leak where they considered splitting Spider-Man 3, or at least they were doing like a kind of a war game about Spider-Man 3 being split into 2 or 3 parts, and that they would sell X amount and X amount and X amount, but they would actually just make the most amount of net revenue by just selling it once. And so that suggests to me that they still want to sell mostly $70 games. What do you think, Dustin? Do you think Helldivers 2, as well as Ratchet back in the day in 2016, Miles in 2020, is this a sign that there should be more mid-tier first and second party games?
Well, in the case of Helldivers 2, I actually think that the success of that game told them that they undercharged for that game. I think they could have easily charged, because it was what? Was it 40?
It's 40, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they could have easily charged 60 for that game, and it had to have been just as successful without any issue. I think that they are looking at it like, fuck, we could have charged so much more for that, and we didn't. So I don't know if they're necessarily learning that from Helldivers, but when I look at Sony, I think that they're purely about right now these big budget games that, as you were saying, Colin, sticking to that $70 tier. And then these live service games where they're kind of dipping their toes into something new. And so the price points to watch are going to be Fair Games and Concord to see whether or not they try to make those a little bit lower. Or, I mean, it's even possible that one of those two games is free to play and lives off of microtransactions, because a lot of live service games are. I mean, if the idea is to chase Fortnite money, I mean, Fortnite is totally free technically. So there is a possibility that one or two or zero, I guess, of them are free to or totally free to play. So I always liked the path that Miles Morales had, these kind of in-between games. They're able to use the same assets and have a smaller experience and kind of get more bang for your buck out of the development of the previous game. I always thought that worked really well. I'm surprised they're not doing it for God of War or something like that. I mean, maybe they still are. Kind of seems like at this point they're not. But I do like those in-between middle tier games. But I really just don't think, I think Sony views themselves purely as this big release, big budget. I think that specifically those $40 games outside of Helldivers were from Miles Morales would have been a remnant of the Sean Layden era, don't you think, at that point?
Yeah, definitely. But I also think that it's if anything, those games were designed to buy time and extract a little bit of money. And they did. I mean, Miles Morales extracted a lot more than a little money, but they were both followed up by full price $70 games.
Right.
So it's not like Sony was like, yeah, let's stay there. They are bouncing. It's like jumping and bouncing off of it and getting people's attention and so on. I don't know. We might see an interstitial Venom game at that price point. I mean, I think that's fairly likely, right? So they'll be in that space again. I think the balancing both is good. One is about extracting the last amount of money out of a product by reusing assets and being kind of smart and wise and having really clean pipelines about how we make these kinds of games. And then you move on and you want to get them to buy the next big thing, I would assume. Chris, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Helldivers is a weird one because I know this isn't true because it's, anecdotes are anecdotes, but like I know a lot of people who specifically made that jump to buy Helldivers specifically because it was at 40, and like because there were great multiplayer experiences that I've been like, jump on it. It's like $60, $70. No, I'm not going to do that. But 40, because it was so affordable in comparison, was like a big like, oh yeah, it's no brainer, no problem. That pays for itself, kind of, even if I just play for like a weekend. So I don't know how true that is for like the overall majority of people. Obviously, like word of mouth of a game like Helldivers being good is bound to do well for that game anyway. But I do think the affordability of the price point did play a big part into why that game took off in the way it did. But I don't know if that's necessarily the lesson that they're going to learn from it, because it's really infrequent that something like this happens. Like Helldivers anyway. So I like the $40 space. I think some of the most interesting stuff comes out of that in some way. I've always been a proponent of AA and just the strange things that come out of that. But the idea that, like you said, Colin, the idea that it's just a recipe for success is a far cry from the truth. There's a lot of games that I enjoy, that Medieval being one of them, where it's just like, oh yeah, 500K is terrible. Like it's not good. It's not good. It's good theoretically in the sense that like, wow, Medieval hasn't been around for a long time and there's still 500,000 people willing to play it, but it's not enough to really justify or to build a strategy off of, right, knowing that it's like, oh,
it might have paid for itself. I would believe that at 500,000 sold, $30 or $40 a piece. So you're looking at,
I don't know. I think I like the $40 play space. I like that, but I do think Sony is not really necessarily in the space of trying to delve into that. I think what Sony wants to do is be where Nintendo is at, where they can keep things at 70 for fucking ages. And I think honestly they're kind of getting to that point where like I think they could probably justify that. I don't know how long they would have to wait before they implemented something like that, but I could see a future where, not the next Horizon, but like maybe Ghost of Tsushima 2 comes out at 70 and it maybe doesn't go down for fucking years because they're in such a dominant market position that why wouldn't they? If Nintendo is doing it for like hardware that is comparably very, very weak, like I'm personally shocked that they haven't done that already. I understand that there's like probably like a shyness or like a gun shyness at Sony as far as like price is concerned, probably leading back to like all sorts of different things like the $599 and all that stuff. And I understand that, but like, I don't know. I feel like the quality at which they make games and put games out, I think they could probably find themselves in a position very, very soon into the future where they could justify that demand for a lot longer. I just wonder if they'll ever do that.
We'll see.
Because they'd like to be there, for sure.
I think they'd like to be, I don't want to say everywhere, but in as many spots as possible, and that they have to really, what we were saying about Bend earlier and their transformation, their purported transformation, it's like they have to be more deliberate. Like,
yeah,
who gets these spaces? Who gets these dollars? How much time? It's got to be much more symphonic than it ever was because the investments are so high and the time is so long.
Yeah.
And so
and they're also publishing on multiple platforms now, which would make that difficult.
Indeed.
So,
all right, let's move on. Steel Diver wrote in. I actually have an article up to talk about this if we want. Where is it? There it is. He says, "Hey, Clam Crew, what does that mean? With GameStop announcing another queue of earnings, falling short and looking to cut more jobs to reduce operating costs, what is their future? Employees there are already required to work solo shifts, and a year or so ago, they made managers manage 2 stores while also cutting benefits for those few full-time workers. Why should GameStop even continue to exist at this point? I say this as someone who loves physical games. Walk into a GameStop and they barely even have games and often don't even have pre-orders in on time. Thanks and have a giggity day." Thank you for writing in. So GameStop's in a lot of trouble. I wanted to talk about this. I wasn't going to bring it up in the show because it feels like beating a dead horse. But when I saw this, I was like, well, we can at least talk about it in this way. Reuters, the newswire, writes, GameStop faces unsustainable sales decline, cuts jobs to control costs. And so it says, quote, video game retailer GameStop said on Tuesday it had cut an unspecified number of jobs to reduce costs and reported lower fourth quarter revenue amid rising competition from e-commerce firms and weak consumer spending in an uncertain economy. And so Michael Pachter, who was asked by Reuters to kind of give analysis on this, said, quote, an increasing mix of digital downloads is hurting physical retail, and there is simply no reason to go to the store if a consumer can just order a game and download it immediately. And he says this, which is more dire. He says, quote, revenues are highly unlikely to rebound unless management figures out a way to drive store traffic, end quote. And he says later on, quote, I suspect that they will keep trimming costs to generate break even or better, but it is inevitable that their sales will decline to an unsustainable level, end quote. So what do we think about this? It's funny. They don't bring this up as a short article, but I also think it's somewhat powerful that Amazon and to a lesser extent Target and Walmart and others have become so efficient at delivering things that you could, even if you wanted a physical game and you couldn't just wait one day now, like you can get it on Amazon Prime. Like I order, and I feel like there's some algorithmic thing where the longer you, or they won't say it explicitly, but like I get so many things from Amazon way early, like comically early. Like I'll order something and the next day it'll be here. And I didn't like do any rush or whatever on it. And they're just trying to get things out and do whatever they do. And so it's not only the digital stuff. I think it's those who are hanging on to physical are finding better ways to get games as well. Like if you could just be a little patient. It's not like it's not like the crazy days of waiting forever or ordering something from Japan or. So I think there's that too. It's over, I think, for this company. It's been over for a long time. I can't believe that they've hung on this long. So what do we think about this? Do you guys still go to GameStops? And well, Dustin, let's go to you because you buy a lot of physical games. And I'm wondering what you think about this unsustainability.
GameStop, the problem is I feel like there would be room for a company to be a bastion of physical games, a place you could rely on to have games on launch day, to have games when you pre-order them, to send you quality unopened new games when you order them from your website. Unfortunately, GameStop is none of those things. And so in the shrinking physical market, they have burned those people left by giving them such a subpar experience with buying games that they've lost them too, where I don't want to go to GameStop at all from numerous bad experiences. The main thing, and I'm seeing now this pop up online, it's so crazy to me, is them selling you an opened game new and saying, "Oh no, it's new. We use the box on the floor and we kept the game separate, and so it's new." It's like, no. Would you, if I bought a new game and went and opened it outside and then brought it back in, would you consider it new?
And they have people have their grubby hands all over the case, and
oh yeah,
I mean,
they're slimy.
It's not new. They've been pulling that shit since the 90s, and it used to annoy the fuck out of me too. Yeah.
But I've even seen posts online of them you order from GameStop.com a new game and you get that in. I know if you guys haven't seen, Maddie has a series about buying retro games from GameStop, and the type of horrifying shit that he gets that's just like games with like battered cases, all scratched up. Sometimes you get the wrong game. Sometimes you get fake games. So
crazy,
dude. And in addition to like, and I don't even know if this is necessarily GameStop's fault. I don't know if it's a distribution thing, but if you on launch day, if you want a game and you didn't pre-order, there's a good chance GameStop's not going to have it, like at all. Like, this is the place you go to buy games and you don't have them. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, this is what you do. You're supposed to have games. It's in the name, GameStop. I'm stopping here for a game on launch day. You don't have any copies outside of pre-orders? Sorry. I'm sorry. It's just, it doesn't
because they don't want to spend
sense.
the capital on games that they know are not going to sell, or they suspect might not sell. They're too close to the border now. It's unsustainable. They're past the event horizon.
Yeah. So, and it sucks too. Like I said, I would love for there to be that store that was the last bastion of physical games. And you're totally right, Colin, in that the people like me that are still buying physical games are just going elsewhere, where Best Buy has been pretty good about release day delivery. Amazon, a little mixed depending on where you live.
Yeah, I should be clear that I don't buy physical games, so I'm just kind of looking at it from the outside about the experience of getting them on day one. I don't know. Legacy stuff we get in like 2 seconds at this point.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, it sucks about GameStop, and there's just countless horror stories of the stuff that they pull, and they're always trying to get you to buy their stupid subscription and all this kind of stuff. It's like, I just don't want to be there. So I feel bad because losing a game store, no matter how corporate it is, it's a nice thing for a place for people to go to buy games. But GameStop, you failed. So thus you are going to die.
You're fired.
GameStop. You have anything you want to add, Chris?
I think, I mean, GameStop, it's a hit or miss thing for me growing up. I used to go to this place called Software Etc.
Oh yeah, of course.
I had that.
Yeah, it was in the Cross County Mall where I was growing up in Westchester and in Yonkers, and I remember loving that place. I loved Software Etc. They had all sorts of weird shit there, and like action figures and all sorts of stuff. And then they got turned into a GameStop, and since then, I kind of had really, really mixed experiences there. Then we moved away, and there was a GameStop around us that I have fond memories of, like doing midnight releases and things like that. But that was less about what GameStop was and more about just like what they existed to facilitate. And, I found myself on more than one occasion, having a pre-order at GameStop going, and then they just, they didn't have it. Or I would go to a GameStop and then they just wouldn't have any of the things that I was looking for. And then I would go to a Walmart or a Best Buy and then they would have it and everything else in spades. It's like, I want a special edition controller. It's like, they don't have it at GameStop. They have it at Best Buy though. And it's like, well, what am I doing at GameStop really? Just because it's red and seems kind of cool. Like I don't know. The best thing about GameStop to me was Game Informer really. And that was really it.
I saw did they just spin off Game Informer into like its own?
Yeah, they just did that.
That's good for them.
I jumped on that immediately. I was like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for them to kind of get away from them.
Yeah, because I'm with you though. Like I'm shocked that they've hung around as long. I'm at a point now where I'm at a point where I have to admit that I just don't understand how businesses work, because I walked into a Sears in the last like couple months, and I could have sworn like they went bankrupt like fucking 10 years ago. But so I don't know how any of this shit
They did.
works.
I think they're probably in bankruptcy protection or something like that. They're not going to survive, of course. But
it's funny. There's a Sears by my apartment in in Burbank, where like the top floor is completely empty, but it's like walled off with these kind of barricades with like tarps with printed stuff over. This is something new project coming soon.
Oh,
and it's like, I'm sure Sears is gonna. Sears and Roebuck is really gonna crawl their way out of the fucking.
There are 12 Sears left, and I'm looking at the one here in Burbank.
It's crazy.
12. Yeah, it's one of 12.
I don't. But they've been, as far as I understand, they've been dead for a long time. So I don't understand how they're clinging around, or like what that structure even looks like many years later post death.
Yeah, like Sears.
So I feel like that's
Sears. I don't know if it's the same company or someone else bought them. I know that when they did go bankrupt because they had to sell like a bunch of their in-house brands, like Craftsman, and I think Kenmore was another that they sold. And so, and that was kind of I think people looked at it as the beginning of the end of their brand. I don't know, man. I don't. It's weird with GameStop just because I do think that there's probably some sort of demand in every geographic location of some size for one game store at this point. And I wonder if it could be very difficult to do, but like in certain municipalities, like could it be an independent outfit? Like what does access look like to those stores? I don't even know at this point. But I just feel like the experience at GameStop is the experience at GameStop has pretty much always been bad. And I think that a lot of people are living in like some delusional past where it wasn't. But I've had bad experiences there when there were no such thing as digital games. But I do have one thing I want to say. I didn't know that this is not a new thing, I'm sure, but I never go to like, game stores or look at game sections. But Micah and I were in Target the other day. I had to go get some of my crazy pills. And so I was like, let me go look at the toy section and the electronics section. So I did, and I was kind of perusing. And then we were looking at the game section, and it was like just totally barren of any games. Mm-hmm. Where they had like last year's NHL game and like all sorts. I'm like, where are all the games? But then the Nintendo section, and I'm sure you guys have seen this, but I've never seen this. They have prepaid cards for individual games, but like lots of them, not just first party games or not just big games, but like here are some big third party games. I think Hollow Knight had a card and whatever. And I'm like, that's kind of low key brilliant. Why aren't the other companies trying to do something like that where you can give it as a gift? Or some people that like to buy things in cash, or they don't want their credit card on the network or whatever, or something's wrong, they can go buy the specific game and just kind of put it in that way. I thought that was kind of I know that that's probably not a new thing, but I've never seen that, and I thought that was kind of cool. I was really surprised to see that, and I was surprised to see how extensive the collection of so the Nintendo section of Target was like the only good looking section where there seemed to be a lot of product, and everything else seems so barren and fucked up. It's rough out there for the physical player right now. And as an entrepreneur, like as a gamer, I don't give a shit about physical games, but as an entrepreneur, like we're printing more physical games for sure at Lilymo. Like there's not only a market for it, there's a way to make lots of money on it. And I'm surprised like it takes the shitty companies like Limited Run Games or whatever to figure this out. It's like this could be done at a more micro level and people can make money that way, but I digress. All right. RIP in peace, GameStop. Jizzle Dupes wrote in, I hate that name so much. I hate it.
Jizzle Dupes.
Dearest CDC, I know I'm not the only one feeling this way, but I think there's been a bit of a negative overreaction on the panel whenever any kind of news comes up regarding another superhero game being made. Sure, there might be a lot of them, but there are so many games in general being made and released these days that I don't really see it as a problem. Even with Insomniac making an X-Men trilogy after being done with Spider-Man, the leaked documents confirm they're working on another Ratchet as well as a new IP. Not being excited about these projects is totally understandable, but the reaction does feel a bit too overly cynical, especially when we still get great games under these comic book umbrellas representing different genres. Spider-Man 2, Midnight Suns, and Marvel Snap, all being totally different experiences that have been received favorably in their own ways. No one is being forced to play these games the same way people often overreact to the Marvel and DC movies and shows when there are so many alternative options in those spaces as well. Am I nuts, or do you see where I'm coming from at all? Dustin, speak to Jizzle Dupes. What do you got there? You got Spidey on your microphone?
He's got a little Spider-Man. Look at him.
Oh, look at him.
Spidey.
Look at him. He's chilling.
So I think that it's important to remember that when you listen to Sacred Symbols, you're coming for the opinion of Colin, Chris, and Dustin. So yes, you are going to get a cynical take about comic book games from Colin, Chris, and Dustin. And I feel like it's pretty fair in that we're trying to say, like, we don't like these. We are not really into this. And sure, it may be successful and there's lots of people that like it. But I hope that it's clear that there's going to be personal opinion in our show alongside analysis. Absolutely. The other thing I think that's worth saying is that, sure, it's not like every game is a comic book game, but I think the thing that stings for us, particularly in the case of Insomniac, is that you have such an incredible developer that has such incredible ideas. And sure, those can be funneled through the lens of a comic book game. But when you see something that they made like Sunset Overdrive that was so cool and original, and to see that creativity, and again, this comes from our perspective as not really being into comic books, to see that hampered by having to do something through a licensed IP, I think that's where a lot of the pain comes from. And yeah, you mentioned they're going to be doing another Ratchet, cool, and they're going to be doing another IP, cool. But this is a team that is just bursting with cool ideas and talent, and it feels shitty to see them stuck making someone else's characters for a very, very long time. So yeah, it's a bit cynical, but I don't think that it's not warranted in this case.
Well, it's also worth noting that we know from the leaks that the teams working on the new IP and Ratchet are incredibly small. And when they were going to need to lay people off, they were just going to cancel the new game. You know?
Right.
So it shows you where they're at. Like, that Sony is in hock to Marvel for that long with Insomniac is crazy to me. But that would be, it's not exclusive to Marvel. It'd be any company. Like, if I just don't understand the licensing realities of doing that, makes no sense. And maybe they have some sort of sweetheart thing with the Spider-Man movies and everything wrapped up where they just have a good relationship with, you know, because they're obviously very intertwined with Sony Pictures as well. But I digress. Chris, do you think we are too cynical and hard on the Marvel and DC scene?
No, I don't. See, the issue is I think it's being viewed through the lens of games, which I understand because like that's what this show is about. But really, I think what's going on here, not only is it a studio that is and we're talking about Insomniac specifically right now. Not only is it a studio that is, you know, Sony owned, that is kind of entangled with this IP for the foreseeable future to the point where it's going to be a hilariously long time before we get anything that is really, really new from them. But it's also, they're also intertwined with an IP that is also kind of subsuming other areas of media as well. Like that to me is really what it is about Marvel. I would be kind of annoyed at the prospect of Insomniac doing this or being stuck this way for any IP or like if Insomniac had to make Harry Potter games for 10 years, even though we're not getting like a ton of Harry Potter media outside of that, that would bother me as well because it would take their talent off the board from their original ideas. But so the fact that it's kind of like a double whammy with Marvel, where it's like, not only are we getting Marvel stuff exclusively from Insomniac for this long, but we're also like, every movie is going to be a fucking superhero movie. There's a new TV show. What is it? Oh, it ties into fucking Daredevil or it just feels so all consuming when it comes to Marvel stuff. And I say that as somebody who likes Marvel stuff. Like, I love Spider-Man and I love these things. I have so many action figures and so many comics from when I was a kid. I love it. But there's a point where it just kind of, it gets a bit much. And that's not to say that these games are bad. Like Spider-Man 2, I thought was really, really fun. And I hear Midnight Suns is really good. And, you know, I mean, X-Men Origins Wolverine from 2009 was a great game. Like, it's not like these things can't be also good. It's just a matter of, you know, what is now off the table because this exists that could have been great in a way that is unique to itself and not just in service of something that already exists elsewhere. And that's kind of what I lament most about it. It's not that Marvel or DC games are subsuming all of gaming. That's not really the problem. It's just a matter of like, well, I think about it with I mean, maybe Suicide Squad is a bad example because like they would have just made another Batman game, but like I do feel like, man, that could have been something that could have been a game that wasn't DC oriented at all, but there was a big incentive for it to be, because they made Batman games and because they were, you know, trusted with that IP. And what could Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League? What could that have been in a world where they weren't necessarily incentivized by the business, by the objective business realities of like how profitable those things could be? And I understand this is a problem with just how things are, and it's technically an emotional argument because, you know, what works. We know from the financial leaks at Insomniac that, you know, when Insomniac made original stuff, it wasn't as profitable as something like Spider-Man, and so it makes perfect business sense to want to get as much value out of your development time as possible, especially as development times and costs increase over time. It makes sense, and I don't begrudge them for making the business decision that obviously supports their ability to continue to do stuff in the future and continues to draw eyes. I guess I just lament that is the reality that we're in. You know, regardless of whether or not it makes sense, because I would like it, as much as it's as much wishful thinking as it is, for us to be in a world where, you know, they could make something like Sunset Overdrive again, and it could draw as many eyes as something like Spider-Man does. But I know that we're not in that reality, and that's just kind of it just kind of sucks to be reminded of that constantly, I guess. Because we know, and this is the last I'll say about it, but we know that there are plenty of scripts that go through, and this is in Hollywood and you know, TV and Netflix and all these different subscription services. I know for a fact that there are scripts that make it through that pitch line that are like, you know, it's like, hey, this is a really good script, but what if it had the Human Torch in it? And then it gets mixed in. That's what happened with that Cloverfield movie, 10 Cloverfield Lane, where it's like, oh, this is a really good script, but what if it was like, what if it had Cloverfield in it? It's like, well, it's not. I guess I can put Cloverfield in it, but like, it's not. That's not what this is. But it's like, oh, but it will be what it is, because that's how we're going to get this made.
Yeah, it's
because otherwise no one's going to look at it. And so it just sucks that we're in that reality, and these games are kind of like a reminder of that.
That's true.
It's not necessarily that I have a problem with them doing it. It's just I have a problem with the reality that is kind of before us that makes that really the only viable way to get things off the ground.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I like Spider-Man 2 a lot. And I think that part of my enjoyment of Spider-Man 2, I say this too about like when people are like, look at this fucking Marvel dialogue or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not really know what you're talking about. I think part of it is like people are saying about Immortals of Avium, I think. And I'm like, I kind of liked it. Or even something like Forspoken, where I'm like, I don't find this quite as egregious as you guys do. But I think it's because I don't absorb all this shit. So
right.
I believe fully that many of the Marvel products as standalone products are actually very good. But I can't avoid the creative bankruptcy of just being funneled into this almost exclusive fictional universe where everything you consume comes from it. It just, my inability to relate to that makes me inherently cynical. It's not that I'm cynical about superheroes per se, because it's Star Wars too, right? Like, which is something I loved, but like the Star Wars I loved was, and we're going to do our Star Wars bitching constellation in the coming weeks, I think, for those who want to participate, but because people had asked, like, what if we just encapsulated all of it in just one episode and just got it all out? It's like, okay, I think Gene's going to be on it digging. I don't know. We'll figure out who, but it's like when I was a kid in the 90s and I was reading iJedi or the Han Solo trilogy or whatever, everything was kind of like a treat because it wasn't constant when Shadows of the Empire came out, and then the game, and even bad shit like Terras Kasi, or good stuff like Dark Forces, like weird shit like Yoda stories. Everything seemed a little bit more deliberate, and you could say it's like more of a childlike wonder. I didn't have access to all of it, but you can just go objectively look at how, the cadence of things and how they released, and see that they're always left a little bit more. If you liked it, that you would want a little bit more. But we never. I really wonder if I grew up as a Star Wars fan in this era, if I would have actually become one, because the reality is that I don't love anything as much as people love like all of the Marvel things or all of the Star Wars things. Like I could not imagine wanting to be in that universe that much. It seems so limiting. And so it's not only the literal limiting of opportunity cost and money and risk and all the things that go into making a game in the corporate and commercial side, but like the idea of just having something else to say. At some point it becomes really rote and really lame and nothing. And so it doesn't matter how good the individual pieces are because it all is in the same bucket. So people can say like, oh, dude, you love Andor, you love the Book of Boba Fett. I'm like, you're probably right. But you have to take it in the context. These things don't come in a vacuum. I don't understand why we want companies like Disney, these megalithic companies that should be so deeply creative, yet lack so much intrinsic creativity and certainly the willingness to take risks. Disney bought that brand and ran it into the ground. And I want there to be creative reasons, first and foremost, that things exist, dealing also with the commercial realities of how things exist. And that's what Chris was getting into. Like, I totally get that. And that's true, but that's like dumb, ignorant boardroom shit that people have no idea what they're talking about. Say and do. The people that, the same people that revived G4, like we always bring up. It's like that was a literal choice that people thought was going to work. I would have gladly taken a consultancy fee to be like, oh, you should definitely not do this. And so there are not enough people saying no, and the market seems too readily willing to just eat this stuff up, and I just can't relate. So it's hard for me to not be cynical about it. I don't do it to insult anyone, and it's only intrinsic to superheroes, really Marvel, not even DC, which I think is much more restrained in all things.
Yeah.
Probably by nature of they don't have as much money and they don't have Warner doesn't have the backing and all that kind of stuff. But it's not even Marvel / DC. It's really just Marvel for me. And it's not like sci-fi. Like I have no problem with Star Trek or something like that. It's Star Wars.
Yeah.
So really do anything too much. I was detached from Star Wars by the time they ran it into the ground, in my opinion, but I just hope they don't take anything I like at some point. And I don't even know what that would be. We wait years for Dragon Quest games. We wait years for Final Fantasy games. We wait years for The Last of Us, all these other things. So I hear you loud and clear. You asked at the end of your question, Jizzle dupes. Am I nuts or do you see where I'm coming from at all? No, I see where you're coming from. But I hope that you see where we're coming from too. New creative ideas. I'm not in it for the commercial realities of the publishers. I don't really care. I really just want to see new and cool things. Or if you revisit old things, like we were saying with BioShock, like what if Judas was a BioShock game secretly? They're not going to call it that, of course, but what if it was in the same universe? Well, it's like, dude, it's been more than 10 years. They haven't done anything. That's cool.
Yeah.
But what if we had like a BioShock TV show, a BioShock trilogy of movies, trilogy of books, comic series, spin-off, and then they were like, oh, and Judas is a BioShock game. I'd be like, well, that's different. The context is different, isn't it?
Yeah.
So like if they were being like, oh, Star Wars Outlaws or whatever that game is, that looks pretty cool. It's coming out. And I'm like, that would be really cool if there wasn't 7,000 other Star Wars games, but that actually does contextually ruin it for me. If it was like, oh, we put out a trilogy of new movies and a couple of the interstitials and this game, then the context is different. I don't see how that's that hard to understand, but teach their own.
Yeah.
Jizzle dupes, be well. Finally, Zugdar wrote in and said, hello, SS crew, and congrats to 300 plus. Many gaming analysts and media are talking about the stagnant console market. While this may be true, can we take a quick minute and give Nintendo flowers as the gateway console market feeder for Sony and Microsoft? My kids, 6 and 9, are classically gaming trained, but most of their friends are not. Without Nintendo providing age-friendly content, planting the idea of dedicated systems, learning the 2-thumbstick layout, and showing what premium games look like at a young age, I can see the console market backpedaling instead of being just stagnant as it is today. I think this is a good point, but I only think it's a good point for the Switch era. Because I'm not even being facetious. Like, the Wii U was so stupid that I could see that turning people off from video games. And then when you go further backwards from that, Nintendo wasn't really operating in the same control space or anything like that. So there's nothing you can really glean from them at the time. They were always like a separate category in the Wii era. The DS with the stylus, like it was all totally different. The Switch is really the first kind of machine that they made that made some semblance of sense that wasn't trying to do anything cute. other than be like an operable console and handheld. So yeah, shout out to Nintendo. I think they're doing great work. And that conversation is coming up a lot about the stagnance of the console market, but that's really coming from Microsoft and Phil Spencer interviews, where I'm sure it's stagnant for them, but Nintendo and Sony show that there is somewhat of a healthy gaming market in the core space still. So I'm not as worried as other people are in the short to midterm. In the long term, of course, everything's going to change. Dustin, do we need to give Nintendo more credit for their gateway drug capabilities?
Well, I think now it's more important than ever. This is something that I think about being a future, well, I guess kind of a current dad. The baby's there, just not born yet. About how my kid will come up with games. I get concerned because I do see, and obviously this is kind of a separate thing, but like the iPad kid, right? The rise to prominence of the iPad kid, and not necessarily my own family, because I don't think there's anything wrong. It's just not what I would like, in that there are little cousins of mine that are so obsessed with Fortnite and Roblox and stuff like that. And I don't know how to feel about it, because maybe that is okay for that to be their gaming. It's such a different experience than mine that I think that's my gut impulse, is that it's not good. But if it's up to me, like our write-in here, Zugdar says about trying to classically train your kids. And it's not that I'm going to say, hey, this is the NES. This is your first gameplay experience. You must play NES games and you can work your way up to other stuff. I don't care about that. My thing is that I want my kids to understand at least what I believe video games should be. So something that you enjoy many of them throughout the year. You play one at a time, or one or two at a time. They have a start, they have an end. And it's not that there's anything wrong with multiplayer and live service games, but when I see the deterioration of video games become just user-generated garbage from Roblox, by and large, there's good stuff on there. I understand that. But randomly playing this weird iPad stuff and Fortnite, and that's kind of the extent, that grosses me out. And so if Nintendo, is leading the charge in terms of being kid-friendly and showing, as the write-in says, like high quality experiences that are meant to be enjoyed and played and moved on from, then hell yeah. Shout out Nintendo for doing that. I say that as I wear my Nintendo New York jacket and Zelda shirt. I'm like total shill mode right now. But yeah, I think that's very important. I'm very glad that they're around and hopefully healthy by the time my baby boy is playing games, because I think it'll be
how is that little boy?
That little boy playing Nintendo, playing Zelda. So yeah, I'm excited for it. So they will definitely be classically trained on Nintendo.
Get that boy his Kid Icarus cartridge.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man!
All right, very well. Chris, you have anything you'd like to add before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I think you're kind of on the money with it really only being true for the Switch, because in my experience, like I remember kids in my family coming up more on the PS2 and like the even the 360 when I got a little older, and some of my younger nieces and nephews were starting to game. Like the Nintendo really wasn't a big part of their lives at all, which is actually super fucking interesting. Because they just have such a completely different perspective on games and what is important to them. Like they have no relationship with Mario, like at all, which is just so interesting to me because like I did, even if it was like a very limited, like I remember playing Mario on the NES and playing 64 on the DS when that came out and being enamored with it. And so just having an entire generation of younger kids that are in my family that have a really, really deep relationship with video games, but almost no experience with Nintendo is kind of fascinating to see, because they were just older by the time the Switch came around. And I saw that change happen with the Switch, where the Switch actually kind of asserted itself in some level of dominance among that age group. So I think for sure, like they've got a good thing going with the Switch. I think if they continue on with this design and don't do that thing that Nintendo likes to do, which is just kind of like reinvent the wheel for no reason, I think they're they're going to find themselves in a really good position to be that kind of stepping stone. And in many cases, not even a stepping stone, but a place that people stay for very, very, very many years to come and many generations to come. So yeah, props to Nintendo. I always will have a massive amount of respect for them and what they do and what they did and even just the quality of their software, even if it's not necessarily the stuff that speaks to me the deepest. They're an important part of this industry. They're an important part of my childhood, and yeah, no doubt. Flowers to Nintendo.
Yeah, I've said before that my most fanboyish in my life was my Nintendo. I am still most fanboyish about the NES, the SNES, and stuff like that than I am about any machine or any generation. Like crazy fanboyish about the NES and the SNES in comparison to its competitors and all of that. So it's I'll always love them too. They're just not really for me anymore. And I think actually it's a little different, but what I said about Star Wars and Marvel kind of goes for Nintendo too. After a while, it's just like, all right. The one thing I respect about Sony, or there's a lot of things I respect about Sony and PlayStation, is the games that were relevant in the PS1 and PS2 era are really not relevant anymore. Like the one that pulls through is Gran Turismo, which is, kind of a sports title that there's only 7 core entries in. And then you have something like God of War, which is from late in the PS2 era, but they've kind of reinvented themselves over and over again. And it's my hope that by the time we get the PS6 and if it goes on beyond that, I don't know if it will, but we are again on to new games. And that's kind of the limiting factor in Nintendo as well. Is it's just like, okay, it's the same game. Why are we always doing these in the same way? It's a peculiar choice, but it's a choice that works very well for them in a hardcore space where people buy those games by the tens of millions. You can't argue with that. So I'm always pulling for Nintendo because I think there is no gaming without Nintendo. And it wouldn't even be worth having the industry without Nintendo. A lot of other companies can come and go, but they can't. No way.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get the hell out of here. It's time to go. Episode 300. Wrap it up. Chris, goodbye to you. Have a good rest of your day there in New York, or up there in New York.
Yeah. I'm gonna be going to get some sushi with some friends of mine in about 2 hours. Looking forward to that.
Fun.
Haven't eaten all day. We're gonna do all you can eat. So I'm really, really trying to make my stomach empty. It's good. I'm excited.
Very well. Dustin, goodbye to you.
Goodbye. I'm definitely a little low on the meds at this point in the episode, but I'm on the mend overall. So after this, me and Slim Jim and Holly, I think we're gonna go get some food.
Put him in the jar.
And dude, yeah, I gotta get that. He'll
That's
fit.
a big jar. That's a massive jar for him.
He'll fit. But yeah, just gonna try to take it easy for a little bit, just because New York running around so much. Holly's been practically dead since we got back. We try to take it easy on her being pregnant and all, but these pregnant women wear out fast. I don't know what's wrong with them.
Stop complaining.
It's I have a parasite in me. Come on, deal with it.
Did you guys get your steps in? Like, how many steps did you take when you were in New York?
I actually look. You can check on
It's ridiculous.
the health app. Let's see here. My steps in New York on Sunday was 17,000, and on Sunday was 14,000. So
it's crazy.
Well done.
No, she did great though. She did awesome. So shout out to her. Shout out to Slim Jim. Shout out to episode 300. Goodbye.
Well, okay. Yeah, that's fair enough.
That's it. That's all I got.
Yeah, fair enough. And thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support. It was great to see so many of you. 500 of you in New York City. We'll have more live show information for later in the year soon, I think. I think we're having a meeting about that next week. So maybe we'll have more information somewhat imminently. I don't know. I'll leave it up to Ben. But thank you so much for your love, kindness, and support. Hope you enjoyed our choice to just do a normal episode of 300. I think that will be better for everybody. The episode, we'll have I guess it'll be maybe take the place of a Sacred Symbols Plus will probably be pretty convenient, and we'll put that up at some point, the live show in the coming weeks. Dustin gets the footage, as we said earlier in the show, so we can start editing that and getting that together. So look forward to that. That'll be on Patreon. So patreon.com/lastdaymedia, where you can support us. Patreon.com/lastdaymedia for early ad-free access. Patreon.com/lastdaymedia to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas. Lastdaymedia.store for merch. That's it. Time to go. See you later. Goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.